What is up, everybody? It is the Boys on the Bench. I am your host, DJ Riley, and alongside me, as always, some of my best pals in the world. My brother, unfortunately, who is an Alabama fan, Dalton, and Nathan, who may be worse right now up to this point, is a UT fan. And that is the purpose of this episode. We'll be doing some college football playoff rankings, our reaction to those, all of the fights that went all out, throughout all of college football look crazy, and then a little bit of an NFL recap. So looking at that, but first off, boys, how are we doing? I know it's been a while. We've got to start trying to be a little bit more consistent with this, but as always, how are we doing? Coming off of Thanksgiving weekend.
Hey, it was good, man. I got to see you in person. It's been a while.
It has.
You know what I'm saying? So seeing some of the family, got some turkey. Been good, man.
Good.
Now we're all finally back home, settled down, still trying to burn off some of those calories. So
I've been living the dream, man. I've been trying to burn off calories not from Thanksgiving, you know what I mean?
You put them all back on during Thanksgiving?
I never got rid of them. There's nothing else to put on. I just added.
last couple Thanksgivings.
I mean, probably about 25 of them. Yeah, would be my guess.
That makes sense.
That's all right.
No, it's been good. We had a good weekend. You know, we got to see Texas and Texas A&M rivalry be reborn, and I'm sure the other half the state ain't too happy, but I can tell you right now, my half is pretty happy.
Yeah, my part here in Austin, I feel like I was going to see flames in either one direction. If I looked out kind of east, I could kind of see College Station up in flames, or if I just kind of looked out my back door, it's like, oh shit, like what is that big ass fire going on? But I was like, regardless, I feel like I'm going to see massive fire miles away. So nothing yet so far. It looks like everyone's doing okay.
Yeah, good outcome for my Longhorns here, but win or lose that game, I'm glad that rivalry is back. It's good to have that rivalry back. It's one of the best in college football, and it's been gone for quite some time. And yeah, went into College Station, handled a business, and played some big boy football right there. So it's ended my Thanksgiving weekend pretty nicely.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it did look like it went pretty well for y'all. But what I did want to bring up as well, so if we're looking here at the college football rankings, is what we've got here is Oregon and Texas. So this is the newest AP rankings, and not necessarily the new college football rankings. So Nathan, we kind of had that discussion, but I mean, it's again, for the most part, it's been pretty accurate. What's up? Thank you in the chat. Go cool. So anyways, though, but like what we were saying though is the AP rankings are pretty similar to what we're seeing in the college football rankings, which is nice, right? I mean, we kind of have a rough estimate, but again, with that comes a little bit of frustration. And Dalton, I know that was a big heated part of contention over our Thanksgiving break. If you don't know, as I mentioned before, Dalton is a massive Alabama fan, as well as most of my family. I'm the only one that's not. I'm kind of the black sheep in that sense. But it's cool. So, but with that being said,
Yeah, you're lucky. You're lucky you got invited to Thanksgiving dinner. I'll say that.
Yeah, and you know what?
DJ walked in and immediately the dinner was over.
And that's okay. Hey, if I'm going to bring anything, I'm bringing the heat. I helped mom cook. So I that way I felt like I had a little bit of leeway for the arguments that I was going to be bringing to the conversation. Right. So why not? I felt like I had to get in a little bit of work while I could. So anyways, though, looking here, we got Oregon, Texas. I feel like those are kind of obvious at that point after watching, like Nathan, you said, Texas going into College Station, doing a little bit of work. And I know that there's a big question mark around Texas that I'm sure that we could talk about for quite some time. But I still kind of wanted to go through everything else. Penn State finds himself bumping up from 4 to 3 in that situation where we saw Ohio State lose and Penn State just goes out and manhandles Maryland, as you can see there, 44-7. So that was good to see them. Notre Dame lock, Georgia lock. Tennessee did good work against Vanderbilt after starting bad that first half. Then that's that Ohio State game that we lost. So really what we're looking at through here, who are the teams that are locks despite the the conference championship that they're in?
Well, lock-wise, of course, I think if you're playing in your conference championship game, you're a lock, other than Clemson and SMU. If Clemson loses, they're out. If SMU loses, they're out. So I think everybody's pretty much a lock here, except for those two teams. If you're playing in your conference championship in the Power Four,
And I feel like that makes the most sense, right? Because regardless of the outcome of Oregon, Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame obviously not playing it. I know that that's a massive point of contention. This year, I feel like they kind of get away with it. I don't think that, Notre Dame necessarily needs to prove themselves, right? Like in another conference championship game. Like I know that that's going to be heated at some point in time in the future.
yeah, no, this year no, but just because of how bad the ACC is, I mean, Miami was supposed to run away with this conference and they didn't. But like you said, in the future, I think Notre Dame has to join a conference. It's getting to the point now that you're going to have to join one because Notre Dame can go undefeated, completely undefeated, and they still won't be ranked in the top four because they're not in a conference. And if Notre Dame, say if they stacked their schedule, played Georgia, Bama, Texas, Ole Miss all in one season and beat them all by 10 plus points in each game, they still wouldn't be ranked in the top four because they're not in a conference. I mean, they need to be in a conference, and if they were to join a conference, I have a feeling they would probably join the ACC, which is BS because it would be a cakewalk for them. But I think Notre Dame needs to be in a conference.
Well, I think the ACC just makes more sense. I mean, I could see them joining the Big Ten. It just doesn't make sense for them to join the SEC to them because it's already hard enough as it is for any team to join at that point, even Notre Dame. So to me, it's either going to have to be the ACC or the Big Ten. However, I like we're saying here, they've got to join soon. I just don't see how this is really. I feel like it's quite unfair for a team like this to come in and nitpick their schedule, and find a way to essentially find their way into at least the top 12 every single year, doing so. So they really need to be able to get into a conference. I think this is something that they need to get fixed like ASAP.
Yeah, and what bothers me though is that when you look into people talk about Notre Dame, is that they're an independent. But what bothers me is that they always try to find the easy way out. So if the committee is going to come in and say, look, if you want to be talked about like everybody else has talked about, join a conference, they're going to be like, all right, well, we don't want to play in the Big Ten because we want to be in the playoffs. We want to be the best team in the conference. And that's why I think they'll join the ACC because they always try to find the easy way out. I feel like that's Notre Dame. I feel like the committee thinks that as well because they have put Notre Dame in the playoffs and been burned by it.
Arguably their best game this year, or their hardest game, has been Louisville. So at 15. So I mean,
I would say that or the A&M game that they started the season with.
I would say that's their second best one, but that's even then. That's really the only two they've played other than Navy and Army. So I mean, you got to have those with Notre Dame. That's part of the history. But I mean, they got to be able to get into a conference and be able to get these harder matchups. And I think obviously that's something that needs to be done. It's going to create these rivalries. It's going to make college football more exciting to watch Notre Dame. I just think keeping them here in this independent, is not how it should be done. Especially with a team of this caliber, they need to be in a conference and they need to be represented.
Not to forget, they also lost to Northern Illinois at home.
They did 16-14.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that for the most part, like you can kind of look at like that for most teams, kind of. I mean, obviously Texas's one loss was to what, Georgia. I mean, obviously Oregon's undefeated, hasn't lost to anybody. Who is Penn State's lost to? Ohio State. They just got demolished by Ohio State. So I mean, a lot of these teams. So I guess Notre Dame, you do have a kind of
Indiana's a one-loss team too.
Yeah, and they've probably had the easiest schedule in all of the Big Ten, right? If we click over here and look at their schedule here on the left, like, I mean, they really haven't played anybody. And Nathan, I know that we can kind of say the same thing about like what we were saying about Texas,
Penn
right?
State.
But I mean, yeah, so Penn State too. It's a lot of these Big Ten teams, like what we're seeing, like Indiana and Penn State definitely had a little bit of an easier schedule. That their hardest opponent that they had definitely faced was Ohio State, and it wasn't even close. It was a 38-15 victory or loss to them, like not even close. But and again, so Indiana Hoosiers, like that's where it comes in. Like, yes, you came in at number 10, but we only take the top 12 teams. So, and I think that's kind of where my issue, is stemming from all of this, right? Dalton, my biggest conversation with a lot of these things, and we don't really see 3 lost teams until we get down here to number 11, and that is Alabama. But I'm just telling you, I know that it felt obviously very targeted, and sure, you can say that to an extent, it was, but I'm going to make the same conversation for Ole Miss. I'm going to make the same conversation for South Carolina. I'm going to make the same conversation for any team that has a 3-loss team. And it's simply because if you look through all of this, we see a couple 2-loss teams in Iowa State, BYU, UNLV, who's playing in their conference championship versus Boise State, who Boise State is only a 1-loss team. Their 1 loss was, I believe, by 3 points to Oregon, and we're seeing them at number 10. They jumped up less than what we saw Alabama jump up this last week. Like, and I get it.
Yeah.
It's the strength of schedule, and believe me, I get it. But I think that, again, that's where my issue with all of this is. You do not put 3-loss teams in these playoffs. And the reason that I say this is, what is the criteria to be bowl eligible in college football?
6 games.
6 games. Can we
Wins,
not?
yes.
Can we not say that in order to be college football playoff eligible, 10 games? If you play a 12-game season, that only limits you to 2 losses. I feel like that should be criteria. It shouldn't be, it's got to be the most deserving. Okay, or not be the most deserving. It's got to be the best teams. I get that. And guess what? That's going to do is it's going to sell tickets. But what that hurts is recruiting and everything else. And that's where my issue is, especially as a Baylor fan. Because what we're seeing now, last week, I believe what it was in the college football playoff rankings, if we go back and look at it, week 14, and then I got to go over to not only the AP poll, because again, the AP poll and the college football playoffs poll are 2 completely different things, and forgive me as my internet's running a little bit low, but I believe that what it was only one Big 12 coming in there, and we weren't really high in a sense. Get out of here, ad. We don't want to see it. So a Big 12 team. So if we're looking at the college football playoffs that was released this last week, do we even see a Big 12 team in there? No. Right? I'm not seeing
Ranked in the top 10?
in the top 12.
No.
There's not one. If you look here, conferences, there's not a Big 12 team. The first Big 12 team is listed here at 16. So we have what's considered a Power 4 conference, and they're the best team is dropped all the way down to 12. That's basically just saying, like, basically F the Big 12. How does that help anybody's recruiting? Arizona State is having one hell of a season.
Yeah, they are. They were projected last in the Big 12, but I don't know why they're disrespecting the Big 12 so much. I feel like there's better football in the Big 12 than there is in the ACC.
Right. Well, I mean, you can have that conversation, but regardless, I feel like what you have is you have the label as a Power 4 conference. You know what I mean?
But do you though? Does the committee actually look at it as a Power 4 conference or a Power 3?
I mean,
based on the ranking system, it looks like they're looking at it as a Power 3. Yeah, you can say politically correct it is Power 4. But I mean, let's be honest. Like, Big 12 really didn't get any love.
We don't. And unfortunately, Boise State's in a very similar situation. And I get it. It's the Mountain West. Like, we're talking about knocking down a couple pegs here, going down to the Mountain West Conference.
Notre Dame might as well go there.
Right.
Like, I mean, like that's a very, very, it's not a very competitive
Go to the
conference
Big
at
12.
all.
Yeah, they go the Big 12. You know,
Big
I
12 or
say,
I'm talking about or Mountain West. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, if they go to Mountain West, good Lord. I mean, you might as well just be a cakewalk there for Notre Dame or the Big 12 because there's really not much competition there. There's not a whole lot. And DJ, I get your point too, like where you're saying, recruiting wise and helping these other teams out and whatnot. But at the end of the day, it's like, and I'm not opposed to that by any means, and I'm not going to try to create an argument at all. I'm just saying we all know how the committee is, and the committee to them is they're going to try to put the 12 best teams in. And I'm not trying to sit here and just right away just say Bama right away. I get that, but we know how they work. They've done this ever since It was the 4 teams, right? And we saw what happened when Alabama got in over FSU last year, right? And I get it. And FSU has a lot to complain about because Bama went in and lost the first round right there against Michigan, and Michigan went on to win it all. And FSU probably feels like they should have won that game. If they would have went in and Bama wasn't put in over them, they probably would have won it. And then we can make the case that Georgia did kick some ass in that game and handed it to them. But at the end of the day, like, I get it. Like, but we know, my point is we know how the committee works. They're going to do what they believe are the best 12 teams. And I know, like, we could sit here and say, hey, Arizona State and the Big 12, and they need to have more representation, and they need to have the same, fairness or whatnot as the SEC. And I get it. And there's a lot of things that factor into that, such as money and the media and whatnot that the SEC gets. And I think money plays a big part of it. Money is what's going to be a huge deciding factor for who gets into these college football playoffs, because I guarantee you there's nothing more that the people want to see is Alabama, if they sneak in, will likely play Notre Dame in Indiana at South Bend, and that is going to be might as well be a pay-per-view. I mean, it's going to bring more viewership than probably Mike Tyson and Paul. Like, it probably will, more than likely. Like, it's going to bring massive viewership.
Yeah,
I think it's going to bring way more viewership than what, we're going to get from, like, Arizona State versus,
I get where you're coming from, but look, I'm going to ask you something. Do you honestly think that Alabama is in the top 12 of college football? Are they one of the best 12 teams? I want you to be honest.
Yes, but
I don't think so.
Hold on. I think they are one of the best, but I think where DJ hints, and I think where you're going with this, is the most deserving. There's a difference between the best and the most deserving. I get it. DJ is going the more deserving route, which is if you have 3 losses, you're out. Where he kind of went back to same thing as being bowl eligible, where you have 6 wins, you're in. DJ, that's a good point, and I think that'd be kind of cool to see them implement in the future. I haven't heard anyone bring that up before. But yes, I do believe Alabama is one of the best 12 teams. Like, yes, have they had some bad losses? Absolutely. But they have also had some.
They didn't have bad losses. They had terrible losses.
Right, but they have also had some of the biggest wins in college football. As a matter of fact, they beat Georgia. Texas didn't beat Georgia.
No, they didn't. But Texas offense didn't play good, but the defense did. But I want to say this about Texas, though.
Bama.
Well,
and they're bad losses. I mean, Georgia did put up
we saw one game out of Texas. We've seen it multiple out of Alabama. But what I want to get at is people are talking about Texas's schedule, right? Right? Both of y'all can agree on that. Talk about how easy Texas's schedule is.
100%, it's been very easy. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone's been talking about that, correct?
Super easy. Yeah.
If it is so easy, then why does the committee look at the Georgia game so good? Why is that such a big win for Georgia? If Texas's schedule is so easy, well, hold on. If Texas' schedule is so easy, and that everybody is saying that Texas hasn't played anybody, then you can't count that Georgia win a big win.
So
you can't sit here and say that Texas is not a good football team because they haven't played anybody tough in the SEC, and then turn around and say, "Man, Georgia beat Texas, and that's a damn good football team."
So listen,
contradict yourself there.
This is my thing with Texas. So if you look here, yes, Nathan, you don't be naive and don't say that y'all didn't have a tough schedule, because y'all didn't. Looking throughout the SEC,
I'm not saying we had a tough schedule. We didn't have a tough schedule. But we got blessed our first year in the SEC. I'm not disagreeing with that. But all I'm saying is that you can't say that it was a easy schedule and then go in and say Texas is not. We don't know how good Texas is because they've had an easy schedule. I'm not saying that their schedule was hard, because it wasn't. But all I'm saying is that you can't say that they're not a good football team and then turn around and say Georgia be a damn good Texas football team. That's what I'm saying.
So Georgia, who's been a struggling Georgia. This has been a struggling Georgia that people haven't seen in a long time, like a struggling Bama.
Yeah, I know.
So it's a good win. It's a good win for Georgia in the sense that it's been a struggling season for Georgia. So it was a good win because they've been struggling. So I wouldn't say it's been a good win for Georgia. Like, it's a much different if Georgia was undefeated and they've been the same Georgia that they've always been and they beat Texas, and then I could see your point. But I think that was more along the lines of this Georgia team's been struggling. This was a good win. Because don't get me wrong, Texas, even though they've had an easy schedule, one of the easiest schedules in the SEC, they are still arguably, I would still say, one of the better teams in the SEC. They like without a
Well,
doubt. I mean, everyone knows that.
we and DJ talked about this before, and I'll tell everybody this who's watching and listening. I think Texas has one of the best defenses in all of college football. I'll die on that hill. I will die on that hill this year. Texas's success is solely dependent on how Quinn Ewers plays. We saw that in the Georgia game. And I would tell DJ this, the fact that Texas went down 23-0 at halftime in that Georgia game is incredible. It could have been 60-0 at halftime. 60-0.
And it could have been. But look, Nathan, this is what I want to say is that yes, y'all have had a very easy schedule in the SEC, but what the difference is that y'all have been able to do is y'all have been able to beat bad teams by a lot. You haven't seen that from Bama. You haven't seen that from Ole Miss. You haven't really seen that from South Carolina even. South Carolina has really good wins, but then they also have really bad losses. Y'all, on the other hand, have just done a phenomenal job of beating the dog shit out of bad SEC teams.
Team.
Like, and y'all have done that. So, like, I do think that y'all deserve to be in the conversation and be put where you're at. I'm not saying that. But I also, from what I hear living in Austin, is like, a lot of people are like, hey, well, it's the SEC. It's not an easy schedule. And I'm like, well, a lot of the teams that you're playing, because again, Nathan, if you look over here on the side, right, Mississippi State, they're 16 out of 16. Y'all played Kentucky. They're 15 of 16, right? Didn't play Auburn, played Oklahoma. Then what is that? 13 out of 16. Y'all played Vanderbilt. Then y'all played Arkansas. Y'all played Florida. Did y'all play Missouri? No. And then so it's just like looking at y'all's SEC schedule, the only bottom 6 to 7 teams that y'all didn't play was Auburn. Every team listed throughout here is in the bottom of the SEC. Not to say that y'all don't deserve to be where you're at, but y'all got handed basically an SEC.
I give you that,
game
but
on the golden platter.
But two of those teams, Bama lost to, and Bama lost to Vandy. No, hold on. The only reason why I don't think Bama should be in is one, they're a 3-loss team. 2, they lost to Vandy early in the season. You can bounce back from that, and it's the middle of the season, but it's always how you finish, right? One of the things that I always paid attention to when Nick Saban talks on College Game Day is that you can lose early in the season, but it's about how you bounce back from that loss. And when Alabama lost to Vandy, Saban said that Alabama can still get in the playoffs, but they have to be dominant the rest of the year. They have to bounce back because it's all about how you play your last 2 games. Well, one of those 2 games was the Oklahoma game, and Texas beat Oklahoma 34-3. So I'm going to sit here and say that I don't think Alabama is one of the best teams, one of the best top 12 teams in college football because of they're so inconsistent. You don't know what you don't know what Bama you're going to get. You can get the Bama you saw in the first half in Georgia, or you're going to get the Bama who you saw at Oklahoma, who they should have beat the piss out of and didn't.
Yeah.
Well, so Bama didn't bounce back after the Vandy loss. That's what I saw, and that's why I don't think Bama should be in the playoffs. I don't think they're one of the best top 12 teams. I just don't.
Well, look, also, like I will say, with Michigan, right? You guys beat them 31-12, and that was a massive win for the Texas Longhorns at the time. Like we'll all say that
week, for that week,
it was massive. And then
week 3 rolled around, and nobody talked about it again.
Well, and then 9 weeks later, we're looking at it and we're like, that was not a good win at all, right? But then we see what Michigan did to Ohio State. Right.
I think Ohio State is frauds. Their offense is terrible. Will Rogers
sucks. But would you say that Ohio State is one of the best 12 teams in the nation?
No, I don't think they are.
You don't think they're top 12?
I think their defense is, but as bad as their offense is, I don't think Ohio State can win a national championship this year.
But
that's not my question. Are they top? I'm not asking. Hold on.
I did say that about Texas Longhorns. I think Texas has one of the best defenses in the country. Them and Ohio State have the top 2 best defenses in the country. But Texas's success depends on how well the offense plays.
Hold on.
I mean, that's the same argument you're making for Ohio State. But Don, go ahead.
That's what I'm saying.
My question is
Texas is playing in a conference championship game. Ohio State's not.
Fair.
Okay. But my question is not
Just
if they can
saying.
win the national championship. It's if they're one of the top 12 teams in the country. Is Ohio State one of the top 12 teams in the country?
Yeah, probably so. They could probably beat Alabama right now by 20 points.
All right. Well, that was extra. All right. But what I'm saying is they lost to an unranked bad Michigan team. With that being said is it can happen to the best of teams, even Alabama, right? And one thing that I will argue is and you know this, and the only reason I'll back it up is because of what happens after those games. Bama is going to get the best of every single team it plays, the absolute best. The reason I say that is because as soon as every team that's beat us, we've lost 3 games, and they've all been away games. The fields have gotten absolutely demolished and stormed every time that they beat Bama because people want Bama. We get everyone's best week in, week out. Now,
So what's the difference from this year from 2 years ago then?
from this year, Nick Saban.
Yeah, what's the difference? Okay. Exactly why Alabama is not one of the best top 12 teams in college football because
hold on now, but the coach we got now, Kevin DeBoer,
Nick Saban would have lost 3 games, brother.
He's done nothing. He's done nothing but win, and he went to the national championship last year. Kalen DeBoer. Now, I'm not saying he's Nick Saban, and we may never have another Nick Saban, but we've got a coach that's been there before, right?
Yeah, but was it coaching or was it a star-studded offense that Washington had playing in the Pac-12?
Look at Michael Penix. Michael Penix was at Indiana with Kalen DeBoer, right? He was one of the best quarterbacks in the nation at that time, and Indiana was like 9-1 or 10-0. It was the first time Indiana had ever done that before, I believe, with Kalen DeBoer. He then goes to Washington.
This year was the first year they did it. It was 10-0, I think.
Well, then they were 9-1, and they had one of the first winning seasons. They had been to playoffs. It had been a while. It was something crazy that Kalen DeBoer had done. He then goes to Washington. Indiana then goes like 500, or maybe they went like 6-4. I don't remember. Literally the next year that he left, and Michael Penix stayed. He stayed at Indiana. The next year, Michael Penix transferred his senior year and followed Kalen DeBoer to Washington, and immediately they go to the national championship. So don't get me wrong, they may have been star-studded, huh?
I think Penix played at Washington for 2 years.
All right, so he may have been there for 2 years, but what I'm saying is he went from Indiana, right? Had a winning season, playoffs, or they went to a bowl game because it was 4 teams at that time, right? Or did they go to or did they were close to making top 4, I believe, weren't they? At that time, I'd have to look.
Indiana?
Yeah.
No.
Well, they were
chance, brother.
Dude, but they were high ranked. Look it up. But they were 9-1, I believe.
There was a lot of hope for the season for sure, but
yeah,
Penix's problem, it was injuries at Indiana. But let me ask you this: if it comes down to the 12th spot in the college football playoff, you have Alabama 9-3, and say you have Indiana. What is Indiana 11-1 right now? Who do you put in? Who goes in? Who takes the 12th spot?
Okay,
who should the committee put in? What if Texas loses to Georgia by 3 on Saturday? Right? Texas is what? They'll be 10-2.
Well, yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I don't know what your question is. I'm trying to figure it out.
Who would get in that situation? Alabama?
Over Texas?
Yeah.
No.
Texas is a lock.
Okay, so who gets in? Okay, well then back to my first question then. If it comes down to the 12th spot, Indiana sitting 11-1, Alabama 9-3, who gets in? Who should get that last spot?
So if Indiana loses, you're saying if Indiana loses to Ohio State?
They've already lost to Ohio State, brother. They're not playing in the conference championship.
No. You're saying to Oregon. I'm sorry.
Okay, so here's hold
on.
I feel like here's a more realistic explanation. Or
Indiana is not playing in the conference championship this year. They are not. They're 11-1 and they're not playing in the conference championship game. Alabama 9-3, not playing in the conference championship game. It comes down to the last spot in the playoffs, the 12th spot this year. Who gets the spot? Who should get that spot? Indiana or Alabama?
Well, Indiana is currently at 9, so they're in. So I'm not understanding what your question is.
I'm just saying.
I don't know. But that's not the scenario that we're battling with, Nathan. I don't know what you're saying.
It could be because what happens with these conference championship games? If Texas beats Georgia, is Georgia going to drop down to 9? And Indiana going to go up? Probably not, because it's Georgia.
No, exactly. No, I literally, for what I believe is, let's say this.
I'm saying, like,
so if Georgia
lost, if Texas lost, that could push Indiana back down to 12 or at 13. And
I think Indiana's
if
going to be
Georgia
good where they're
won,
at. I think Indiana's fine. I don't think anything's going to happen in Indiana. No, literally Bama's on the bubble, so I don't know if you're just trying to put me on the spot or whatnot.
no, I'm
That's
not trying
fine,
to. I'm
but
just
Bama's
trying.
on the
No, no,
bubble.
no.
We are not in.
I'm
Like,
just
dude,
trying to
Okay, so like,
understand on
looking
why
at the
people think that Alabama deserves a spot in the playoff.
I
so
don't know. Ask
here's
the people.
but like, again, Dalton, and I know that y'all two are kind of going at each other and each other's teams, and I think that's a fun conversation, but I think that the more so what the important conversation is like, and I think it's mainly because it's something that I'm passionate about, and it's like the criteria. Because if I look at this, looking at the current AP rankings, and again, this is not the college football playoff rankings, it's just the AP top 25 rankings. The top 7, assuming that they're in any sort of mixed matched order, I would say that the top 7 is a lock. That's from Ohio State up. Ohio State, Tennessee, Georgia, Notre Dame, Penn State, Texas, Oregon. I don't see a world where neither of those teams are in this college football playoffs. So assuming that the top 7 teams are in, what a realistic scenario is SMU, if they come in at 8, around 8, whatever you want to do, then they go in and play Clemson, right? Let's say Clemson wins that game. What happens to SMU? Do they
Exactly.
get,
Two lost
do they
team
get,
who played in the championship game.
right?
I think
But here's
if
my thing
SMU
as well.
loses,
I
they're
don't
out.
think and I don't think so. I don't think that a team should be penalized for going and playing in their conference championship. SMU
Losing. I agree with that.
SMU is 11-1. They should not be penalized and be considered a 2-loss team because they went to their conference championship. They are an 11-1 team playing simply for a banner. That's all that they're doing. But unfortunately, what I see happening is they're going to take into account these conference championship games and put so much weight into them. And
That's
SMU
exactly what
is
I'm
going to
getting
end up
to.
getting boned if they lose this game. Now, if Clemson, on the other hand, who is on this list at 18, if they lose this game, they're already out. They're already a 3-loss team. I think that that's the only scenario where you should see a 3-loss team go in. If they are somehow able to finagle their way into a conference championship game, then by definition, hey, if you win a Power 4 conference, get in, bud. Like, you did it. Get in. That's the only way that I think that we should see a 3-loss team. So
Well,
SMU,
I agree with you though. I
Who would
agree
you
with
say
you
are the
though.
teams on the bubble then?
I think it's
SMU
Indiana.
is definitely on a bubble.
Well,
Exactly.
yeah, I mean, sure, but
If SMU loses, there's a 90% chance that the committee will kick them out of the playoffs. I
hard
don't
to
think. I don't.
I do
If you
see
play
it.
in
I
your
do
conference
see it, and it's
championship game,
frustrating as
you should
shit.
be in the playoffs. I'm with you on that. If you play in your conference championship game, you should be in the playoffs.
Of a Power 4
Hold on.
conference. Of a Power 4
Power
conference.
4
Not like the
conference,
Mountain
yes.
West with Boise and UNLV. I think that the winner should
Exactly.
be the one that goes in.
Exactly. If you're a Power 4 conference and you play in your conference championship game, you should be in the playoffs. I solely agree with that. But I believe that if SMU loses to Clemson, there's probably a 95% chance that the committee will not put them in the playoffs. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, no, you just had a guy in the chat say, just put Miami in. Chances are they're going to beat Ole Miss, Bama, or South Carolina. So
This dude must be a Canes fan because that defense ain't
They
beating
just lost to
shit.
Syracuse.
I mean, but I can honestly see his point though. I mean, like, sure, they had one bad loss, but like I said, when we first started this,
They lost 2 games.
They've had 2 bad losses.
or
They
I
lost
mean,
to
sorry,
Georgia
I mean,
Tech,
I was talking about
too.
their last game versus Syracuse is what I meant to say. I'm not even sure what just came out of my mouth. What I meant to say is their last game they lost versus Syracuse. But what you can argue for Miami's case, guess what? You can say the same thing about Bama. Bama had 2 bad losses. They got embarrassed by Oklahoma not too long ago. Ole Miss.
Hold on now.
Ole Miss. Oh, no, hold up. Let me finish my thought because again, Dalton. I'm not saying this to necessarily target you. What I'm doing is I'm
No, I
targeting
know.
3-loss teams.
But it just
because
sounds silly.
I can say the same exact thing about Ole Miss. Now, I don't remember Ole Miss's exact schedule and who they lost to, but they've lost to some bad teams. They lost to Florida not too long ago, right? And then Who is the other team? South Carolina. South Carolina has beaten some really good teams, but guess what? They've also lost to some really bad teams. So Miami, like to answer your question, I think that this guy in the chat, thank you, Andrew. This guy in the chat kind of answered that. I do think that for sure Miami is a bubble team. I mean, they're at 14. They obviously have just missed it. But is Miami going to be in a situation where we see some of these conference losses play out and Miami slips their way in? They're a 2-loss team.
No.
I'd be cool with that. They're a 2-loss team. I'd be cool with that.
You don't think Miami would get in?
No.
So then why should Bama?
Because Miami hasn't played any teams in the top 25. They're 0-0 versus teams in top 25.
Currently in the top 25 or
got
play
a
any
point
team that
there.
was ranked?
They like any team that they've played in their schedule as of now are not ranked.
Cal wasn't ranked when they played Cal?
The team is Cal ranked right now. That's what I'm saying.
No, I don't think so.
That's what I'm saying. Any team that they may have played teams that were ranked at that point, but as of today, any team on their schedule is not ranked right now. They are 0-0, no wins, no losses versus any team in the top 25, and they have 2 unranked losses. Alabama is 3-1 versus teams in the top 25 right now. Teams that they may have played that were unranked at the time that are now ranked. So they have 3-1 against teams in the top 25. But they do have 2 unranked losses. But they do have a signature win in Georgia, which is playing for the conference championship, which we had before we lost Oklahoma. We were going to go play the SEC game. If we would have won Oklahoma, which we didn't, and we would have beat Auburn like we did, it was the Texas A&M game was going to determine who was going to play Alabama. We had it.
Yeah,
we lost it.
True.
Right? That was on us. But
that's all.
hey, I'm just saying that's on Bama. But they had it set up to where the game that we just saw between Texas A&M was going to be a deciding factor of who was going to play Bama. So that it came down to the last 2 games of the season, and Bama had already solidified. They just had to win and beat Oklahoma, which very disappointing. So it was a big loss for us because ever since they lost, Georgia was on the bubble looking in to the playoffs. They weren't in the playoffs. They were in the bubble looking in, and now ever since we lost Oklahoma, we switched. Now it was between Texas and Texas A&M who's going to play Georgia, and Alabama is now on the bubble looking in. So we literally switched with Georgia. So, but our biggest win is currently against Georgia, right? And we have 2 unranked losses, which sucks, which you can match with Miami. But the reason I say we had the leg up on Miami, or Alabama does, is because they're 3-1 versus teams that are currently in the ranked top 25 right now, whereas Miami has none.
Okay, but don't. And again, we even kind of talked about this as well. And I get it. I'm not trying to say
all about deserving.
Yeah, no, it's not. And
I don't know if it's deserving.
It's not. That's not even the direction that I'm headed. The SEC gets such special freaking treatment. It's crazy. Nathan, I remember whenever Texas got into the SEC, approved to go into the SEC, and I'm like, hey, welcome to the special treatment. Like, good job, you've made it. Like, no matter what.
I was like, yeah, thanks, man.
Because my issue with all of this, and I did want to address this before I move on. So let me kind of scoop back to this and this Miami point real quick, because same guy in the chat, Andrews, just said Miami destroyed Florida, who did beat Ole Miss. So that does kind of help their case versus getting in over Ole Miss.
Still an unranked team.
Not necessarily Alabama. Yes, Dalton, that is a really good point, but I'm going to stick true to my 3 losses. And so I don't care. I can't make an argument for anybody. I can make an argument for Miami. I think that you have that conversation of like, does Miami get in over Indiana? Because neither one of those teams are 3-loss teams. Like, I don't even really want to entertain the idea of Alabama getting in, South Carolina getting in, Ole Miss getting in, because they're a 3-loss team. You've had enough, because no matter how many good wins you've had, you've had really bad losses. So let's look at the other bubble teams that are on this list. That's the Indiana, that's the Miami, that's going to be the UNLV of those. So I mean, like, yes, for sure.
Indiana's just got to hope that the right people win the conference championship games, because if Clemson beats SMU, this thing is going to be blown wide open, brother. Wide open.
Get out of here, Ad. Yeah,
it's and if people are saying that Alabama is a bubble team, South Carolina needs to be a bubble team. Then
they are.
Are they though?
Who?
Yes,
South
it is.
Carolina.
South Carolina. It's Alabama
right now.
Huh?
Get out of here, ad. They're 13
It's
right
Alabama,
now.
Ole Miss. The 3-loss bubble teams are Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina.
Mhm.
The only reason that they're
know.
struggling
I
is
wouldn't put Ole Miss on a bubble. Does Ole Miss deserve to be on a bubble?
They've had some really good wins.
They literally have the same argument any Alabama fan wants to make. They
Yeah,
want to
that's
have
fair.
it. They want to have. They have it. They have big wins. They beat South Carolina, who is now ranked right behind them. They beat Georgia. Beat the shit out of Georgia. I think it was like 28-10. So
Well, they beat the
Yeah,
shit
they
out of Ole
were.
Miss. Well,
I'm
well,
talking
no,
about Ole Miss. They beat
We're
Georgia
talking about
and they
Ole
beat
Miss.
South
We're talking
Carolina.
about Ole Miss.
So let's
Yeah,
look
Ole
at their
Miss
schedule. But then that's the same thing. Is Dalton, they probably have better victories than y'all do, but then they also have really bad losses. A 3-point loss to Kentucky, then they have a loss to a bad LSU team, another 3-point loss to a bad LSU team.
who Alabama manhandled.
Okay,
Was
but
LSU.
that's fine.
Texas manhandled Oklahoma,
but
and y'all lost to Oklahoma.
And I think that here's the
Y'all lost to
thing.
Georgia, and we manhandled
Okay, y'all
Georgia.
two are going at each other. Y'all chill
Dude,
out with the
you know
Texas
what I'm
and
saying,
Bama
Nathan?
talk.
You know what I'm saying? So shut the hell up.
Well,
Y'all are going at each other.
y'all
But
didn't
look, Ole Miss.
y'all didn't manhandle
Hey,
Georgia.
be quiet over there.
Y'all didn't manhandle
Oh my
Georgia.
God, it's like fighting
By 2 scores, bro.
herding cats over here. Like, hey, let's stay on topic real quick. Anyways, though, I think that the difference that I would almost give Ole Miss the advantage is all of their losses less than one possession, less than one possession, less than one possession. Right? All of 3 of their losses combined total of 13 points. That's it. Y'all lost to Oklahoma by a lot more than that. And one game alone. So all of their losses, they're in really competitive games. Now their big wins, South Carolina, look what they did. 27-3. Georgia, what did they do? 28-10, right? South Carolina, they were even on the road and shut them out 27-3. So I think that I can make an argument for Ole Miss if I wanted to, but guess what I'm not going to do? Is I'm not going to do that because they're a 3-loss team. I'm not going to do this. But what I did want to
the only argument you did make, though, because you kind of did earlier, was saying that is if Clemson loses. You said that's the only argument you'd make.
I think that is the special situation, is because Clemson should not be in their conference championship. That
Miami fumbled the bag.
Miami should have won that game, and we shouldn't even be thinking about Clemson. Clemson season should be done, right? That's legit it. Clemson should be done. But guess what? Who did Clemson?
Miami shit
who
the
did
bed like
Clemson lose to?
Alabama did. Miami had it just like Alabama had it, and they shit the bed just like we did. But yet they're deserving. Is it just because they have two losses?
But here's the thing.
They shit the same bed
Okay, here's the thing.
to an unranked team.
Look at South Carolina. Who did
To a
they
bad team.
Or sorry, Clemson. Who did Clemson lost to South Carolina? Right?
They lost it. They
How
got
many
beat.
spots?
They got bullied by Georgia too.
Well, I'm talking about this last week, and this is where I'm going at with
Oh.
the SEC getting special treatment, which was the point that I was headed to before I went down to this comment, right? So, and thank you, Andrew. And you can't pick between
3-loss
3
teams
SEC
should not be.
bubble teams. Thank you. That's the special
But what do you
treatment
say?
that we're getting.
What do you say?
That you can't pick between 3 SEC bubble teams.
With 3
Like,
losses, he's basically saying
three
that 3
bubble
losses
teams-
are
Okay,
too many.
The 3 bubble
Three
teams that we're
losses are too
looking
many
at
to be in the-
are all SEC
3
teams.
losses.
But real quick, Clemson, they lost to South Carolina. As you can see here, they dropped down six spots. They went from 12 to 18 to a ranked, really good South Carolina team. Guess what happened with Bama when Bama lost bad to an Oklahoma team? Guess how many spots they dropped?
I'm going to say 3.
They dropped
4.
They dropped 6 as well. They dropped 6
Bama
as well.
dropped
From
6. They dropped quite a bit.
So we've created a system to where this SEC gets such special treatment to where if they lose to a 5-5 Oklahoma team at the time, they drop the same amount of spots as Clemson whenever they lose to South Carolina by a field goal. Like, what are we doing at this point? And then let's look here. LSU. Is LSU or Florida a good team this year?
I think Florida, once Lagway took over, that I think they became a new football team.
They have been without their starting quarterback. They are different.
Yeah.
They are different. And here's my thing, though,
Yeah.
is we're seeing here that now LSU and Florida are now getting votes to be ranked inside the top 25. I'm not sure how many losses they got. How many losses? 5? 5
Florida's
losses.
got 5.
Five,
Florida's
maybe
got
5,
5.
maybe 6 losses.
LSU has.
There's not even a
LSU has
single.
4.
There's not even a single team in this list that has 4 losses. But we have people out here throwing votes to, I think, a 5-loss LSU and a 5-loss Florida. We've created.
Okay, well, the
we've
people throwing the
literally
votes are
created
from
a system.
Death Valley or from Baton Rouge, so they can't count
I mean,
that.
sure, that's fine, and you can say that, but there's literally 6 votes that were cast for LSU, 4 votes that were cast for Florida, and then don't even get me started on this Missouri, right? Missouri came in, and Missouri was unranked. They go and beat Mississippi State, and then all of a sudden Missouri's ranked. How do you go from unranked, you beat Mississippi State, and then you become ranked? Literally makes no sense to me.
Andrew says Indiana beats Florida by 30 points. Just saying.
Well, I think we could also have a case.
I'm not trying to bring Florida into this college football playoff conversation by any means, but
they're definitely. If Florida gets in, dude, we're hell's freezing.
Hey, look
over.
Look right behind Florida. My boys Baylor got 1 vote. Somebody's up there in Waco. Shout out.
Hey,
an alumni.
Dalton DJ was probably the vote.
Yeah.
DJ.
DJ was the vote.
But one thing, guys, that I will say that I am kind of concerned about, don't get me wrong, like I'm all about the recruits, trying to get those teams on there, and I am biased. I am a Bama guy, and it would be cool to see Bama out there just to piss off DJ and Nathan and some. But at the end of the day, I see the points that you guys are making. Yes, I would love to see Bama make it. Are they deserving? No. But are they one of the better teams? Yes. But there are other teams behind them that are also good. So I think it's, like I said, Bama shot their own selves in the foot, and it's going to have to come down to, whichever way the cards lie. And I think a lot of help is going to have to go their way. I think when these conference championships kick off, they're going to need, the higher seed to win in all of them.
Which is bullshit.
In order for them to really win. But hey,
here's the thing. Here's the thing with Alabama, and Dalton, I think you can agree with what I'm about to say.
Probably not.
No, if you don't, then you're just not watching the same football team that I've watched. Y'all's success solely depends on how well Jalen Milroe plays football.
Yeah.
And if Alabama were to get in the playoffs, there's a good possibility that they win first round, but there's also a really good possibility that they can beat, say if they get in and play Notre Dame round 1, right? Good possibility that Alabama would go in there and beat the dog piss out of Notre Dame by 40 in the first round, and then can turn around and lose to Ohio State by 20 the second. It's because Milroe is so inconsistent. That's my problem
but that's where I'm kind of going back on you. Is like
Georgia, Alabama.
You were saying that Alabama is not a top 12 team, but now you're saying we can go in there and beat the dog shit out of people.
I do, but
so we are a top 12 team if Jalen Milroe's on his game.
Are consistent.
Right, so we are a top 12 team if we're on it.
Therefore, that does not make you a top 12 team because you cannot show consistency of being a great football team.
Right. So here's the only thing too is like, yes, what we've seen what this has done in the past is where you do put like an Arizona State or let's say or like one of those other bubble teams in over Bama, right? We saw what happened to TCU versus Georgia. Do y'all remember the score to that game?
Oh, it was terrible.
Because they put TCU in over somebody that was a deserving pick, not a who was better pick.
I'll let you finish.
TCU
but I'm just
lost to
gonna
Georgia.
say I hate this take so much. I'm burning up inside. But go ahead and finish.
TCU lost to Georgia. Any guessers?
Guy over here.
No.
Who remembers this?
No idea.
Oh, I remember. It was bad. I stopped watching in the second quarter. It was that bad.
It was on what was it? It was after New Year's. It wasn't long. I can't. It was January, like maybe like 10th.
Anyways,
9th. Anyways, it was 65-7.
It was a beatdown.
But that's what happens when you put deserving teams in, and I get it. But do you think that truly helped TCU's recruits? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I said yes. I said yes. But we also see but how do you think that felt watching that fucking game? Did you guys fucking enjoy it? Because I didn't.
I think that's,
but it helped recruits to argue for your point, DJ. It helped the recruits.
I get it. Yes,
hey,
you
say what you want though, but what that TCU Michigan game was a fucking great game to watch.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, it was. TCU played a damn good game, but then when they go and play,
that's also my argument is like, how are you going to say that? Because yeah, they got their shit beat out in the championship game. They won the first round. They're a top 2 team. They won the first round. Then they got their shit beat in the conference, the national championship.
Yeah.
But also, my thing is I hate hearing like, well, if you put them in, they're going to lose by 30 or 40 points and nobody wants to watch that. And my issue with that is everybody knows that. Sure. Everybody knows that except the delusional fans. Because if you put Baylor in right now, not a lot of teams that we're probably going to beat, and that's okay. But
I'd love to see that.
And I would too. And literally,
put them in. DJ goes, "We're going to the shit, baby."
Hey, and I'm going to be
Put
that
Baylor
delusional
in
fan. But my thing is I would much rather us lose by 40 points than us not even make it at all. Because I think that if what happens right now is if we say, hey, we're going to create a system where no matter what, we're going to let the best 12 teams in, right? If that's the case that we do, I'm telling you right now with the recruits that have happened over the last 10 to 15 years, these are the teams that are going to be guaranteed in for the rest of our lives. It's going to be Bama. It's going to be Georgia. It's going to be Texas. It's going to be Oregon. It's going to be Michigan. And we're not seeing Michigan in this year, but then you see them tearing up the recruiting pool right now. They lost a ton of their recruits after the coaching change, but we can have that argument with Michigan getting in. Ohio State's going to be in, right? I've already got 6 teams in, and I'm sure I can keep going. If you let the best teams in, we're going to have the same 12 teams every damn year. Baylor's going to be fighting for 1 or 2 spots.
Okay, let's just make it 24 teams. Let's do the top 25 freaking tournament.
There's got to be something that's different.
Let's do it.
We can't create this system to where it's going to be, hey, because the recruiting that Alabama or Georgia or any of these other teams that have heavily recruiting pools already, they're going to be like, hey, we can afford to lose 3 games, and guess what? You're still going to be able to compete for that natty. Because I'm telling you, Dalton, do I believe that Alabama is a top 12 team? Yes. I think that you can make a very strong argument that they are a top 12 team. That's not why you put teams in, though. I don't give a team a bowl game because maybe their starting quarterback missed the first 8 games of the season and then he came back and they were one of the best teams in college football. It's like I would love to see.
Right. I
would love to see Dylan Raiola tear it up in a bowl game. No, I'm not doing that. You have to meet a threshold, set the standard. If the standard for getting into a bowl game is 6 wins, then the standard to get into the college football playoffs is 10 wins.
Be 10.
In a 12-game season, that's 2 losses or less. That's 2 losses or less. Because again, all of these other teams, like shit, Boise State, Indiana, SMU, Ohio State, like we said, is already going to be in. Arizona State is at 12. It took them to move up 2 spots for our first representative of the Big 12 conference to be seen in the AP Top 12. That is some BS. Right now,
they're playing Iowa State, right?
No Big 12 team, yes. No Big 12 team prior to last week. In the first release, or I think it was the first release, one of the first releases of the college football playoffs, we had no Big 12 representative. Even if they go out and win their conference, we were going to have no Big 12 representative. What are we supposed to do with that? Like, as a Baylor fan, what the fuck is that? Like, we're only allowed to lose one game.
Did you see the interview?
We're allowed to lose one game.
Did you see the interview with Texas Tech head coach? Did you see the interview with the Texas Tech head coach talking about the Big 12? He's basically saying what DJ was saying. He was like, it's not fair that he was like, you can have teams like this be put in a bubble. He's like, what's the point of being in this conference if I lose one game? Since I play in the Big 12, if I lose one game, I'm out. He said, what's the point?
And it takes our guys a rolling ankle and our starting quarterbacks out. And it's like, well, there goes our entire season. We'll play in a good bowl game, I guess.
All I want to know is what we can sit here and argue about this all day, but nobody knows what the committee is looking at to define the top 12 best teams. What are they looking at? They say they look at everything. Well, I want to know exactly what you're looking at, because no matter what we say or what we argue about, we don't know what the committee is looking at to determine the top best 12 football teams in college football.
I'll tell you right now, I know for 98%.
I was going to say,
well, I said that was a big reason was money.
Yeah, and like Dalton said, I think money comes down to it. I really do, and that sucks. It sucks for it helps the SEC and it helps the Big Ten, and who it sucks for is the ACC and the Big 12. It really does, and I mean, I get everybody's argument. You know, we can sit here and say, "Oh, Bama doesn't deserve to get in." You know, this person should over Bama. It doesn't matter. But like Dalton said, what game's going to bring the most viewerships?
Mm-hmm.
What game is going to bring the most viewers?
Nathan, I feel like if we were in different positions and Texas was on the outside looking at 9-3, I guarantee you'd probably be making very similar arguments to me. You know,
well, I mean,
and a lot of the Longhorn channels would be too.
And exactly,
Longhorn
ESPN.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
It's just like Bama, though. Like you got to understand too is that what a lot of people don't understand is that everybody hates Alabama if you're not an Alabama. Correct?
Yeah, they do.
Everybody fucking hates the Longhorns if you're not a Longhorns fan. It's the same, you know.
Win or lose, this bitch is popping off.
People were saying, hey, I didn't give you shit not one when they lost to Vandy or Oklahoma. I didn't text you not one. I texted you, said, "What's up with Milrow?"
But here's the thing: you made.
I'm doing it right here. I'm doing it right here right now.
Your fucking comments are like, "Hey, now that Alabama's likely out, like, do you still think that they probably have a chance, or who do you think that we would?" Like, your comments are so fucking sideways that they're like, you're not like directly fucking insulting me. You're sideways fucking insulting me, and I'm like, you're such a bitch, Nathan. I'll read your fucking message and I'll delete that bitch. I'm like, so don't go give me this shit. You ain't gave me shit all year because you fucking do.
But no, it comes. I think that's what the committee looks at. You know, they always say, "Oh, they look at strength of schedule and they look at how well you played on the road and how well you did this." And I think it does come down to money and viewers, unfortunately. But I think
it's very little strength of schedule. They do look at strength of schedule, and the SEC is very hard to play in. We all know that. So is the Big Ten. It's very hard.
Special treatment. You will always have more ranked opponents than anybody else. Because we're finding a situation to make Missouri unranked to ranked after beating an 2-10 Mississippi State.
I'm just hitting DJ's like freaking like damn
there's things that
in his body.
Just the playoff in college football is just going to hit like.
Let's just put fucking Texas State. Let's just say they're fucking 10-1. Let's put Texas State in.
Teams in. This is
from the Sun Belt.
This is my only argument.
Let's fucking put them in for the recruits.
Because look, Dalton and Nathan, you brought up a really good point. Or Dalton, you brought up a really good point. Nathan, you would be having the same argument if roles were reversed. If Alabama was 11-1 and Texas was 9-3. And Nathan, you would be. And like that's fine. I would be too if I was Baylor. Because right now I'm telling you that if we would have found a way, Baylor would have found a way to beat Colorado like we should have, at home in Colorado, like we could be sitting up in the top teens, probably 18, 19, but we'd also be playing for our Big 12 conference championship, right? So then I would for sure be like, hey, like this is an argument that I could be having. Like I will put myself in those shoes, but I think that that's the thing.
Like you said, though, you have to set a rule. The committee in college football has to set a rule. And the rule, if you have to win X amount of games to win football, to make a bowl game, it's set at 6. If you don't win 6, you don't get to play in a bowl game. I think, like you said, to prevent all this is maybe after this year you say if you have 3 losses, you're out unless somehow you make it to your conference championship game and win.
Yeah.
Why not 3 losses though? Why is that too much? Why just curious question, not because we have 3, but why 3?
Hold on. Look, I'll tell you why. Dalton, do you agree that if you're in a Power 4 conference and you play in your conference championship game, do you deserve to be in the playoffs?
Okay, so UNLV, I know they're not in a Power 4.
I said Power 4.
I know.
Because the committee has already stated that the highest ranked Power 5 conference or group of 5 conference champion is getting in no matter what. They've already stated that from the start.
Okay, so let's go ahead.
Power 4. If you're in the SEC, the Big 10, the ACC, the Big 12, those are your Power 4 conferences. If you play in that conference championship game, do you deserve a spot in the college football playoff? Do you believe that?
I would say yes, because yes, but but yes, Nathan, I do agree. I do. But
so
let's just say before I lose my spot, it's just like, what if, like in the Big 10, okay, we have something very similar to the Big 12, maybe very rare, I feel like. But what if you do take the Power Four and you have an instance where you have Ohio State, for whatever reason, next year has a very similar season to Bama, and let's say you have it's just Ohio State and Michigan, right? Let's just say they have a very similar season to Alabama and Georgia, and we're looking at 10-12 or 10-13 for whatever reason, and they're the two best teams not going to go play each other in the national championship. Are they both deserving to go in?
I mean,
let's just say they're very similar to Big 12 because the Big 12 is what? Arizona State and who?
Iowa State.
Right, and they're I think 14 or 18 or something like that.
Oh, you're talking about their rankings. They're 12 and 16.
So 12 and 16. Let's just say Ohio State is 12 and 16 with Michigan, and now they're playing for their Big Ten. Let's just say they've had some really down years, and the Big Ten is just dog crap this year, right? Are they both deserving?
If Iowa State's 12 and 6 and Michigan
if Ohio State is 12,
with how many losses?
How many losses does Arizona State and what's his name?
They have two. But that's what we were talking about. If you play in your conference championship, that loss shouldn't matter because, like DJ said, you're only playing for a banner. You're only playing for a banner. But what DJ is getting at is look at the Big 12 and look at the ACC. SMU can lose. They're just playing for a banner, right? The regular season college football is over. SMU finished 11-1. Their first year in the ACC. If they lose, there's a good possibility that they're out of the playoffs as a 2-loss team. Say Arizona State comes in this game, they're 11-1 in the Big 12, which they're not because they have 2 losses. But say they are 11-1, they lose in the conference championship game by a late field goal by 3. Just because they're in the Big 12, they're probably out of the playoffs. That's why I think that you have to have 10 wins in order to get in. 3 losses is too many because now a team like SMU, who was I think they were projected last in the ACC. I'm not sure. Arizona State was projected last in the Big 12. They've had an outstanding year, and they're going to be snubbed of a CFP appearance because Alabama's 9-3 and they lost their conference championship game. That's why I'm saying if you're in the Power Four and you make it,
there's more to that, but yes, that's what it looks like.
But I mean, and even if you think about it, like Alabama's getting a bye week, and I mean, I'm not saying that to necessarily Alabama because I can say the same thing.
Ohio State's getting a bye week.
Okay, hold on.
I can say the same thing to Ohio State. I can say the same thing to Indiana. I can say the same thing to Tennessee.
But I don't get me wrong. Hey, that's a good point, DJ. But I don't want that fucking bye week. You know what I mean? Because that's a scary fucking bye week. Because it could be a bye week going into a bowl game, or it's a bye week going into the playoffs.
Yes,
we don't
but
know
also,
that.
But also think that other teams.
I want the ball in my court.
Other teams.
Then you wouldn't want to win.
Yeah, but
then
understand what I'm saying is
championship game. Then right.
Say
if you don't want, if say Alabama's 9-3 and say y'all get in, and you're saying that you don't want that bye week, then what's the point of playing in a conference championship game? Because you're going to get the bye week if you win your conference championship game.
Right, but here's why I think that the conference championship should affect your standings in the college football playoffs. Now, this is good for Georgia and Texas, Georgia because of where they're currently ranked, but they could be one of the only 4-loss teams that make it because of where they're ranked. Right? If Georgia loses, are they out?
No,
I think they're in since they played the conference championship game. Anybody
4 losses though.
Who for Georgia?
Dude,
Georgia's only got 2.
They got 2, bro.
Hold on, so 2. So yes. So then they'll get 3.
You're right. They should have lost to Georgia Tech.
They should have. That's what I was banking on. That's why I'm.
Yeah, me too. Did y'all watch that game? That game was nuts.
Yes, but hold on. Don't get me sidetracked. But if they get 3 losses, they stay in because you guys say that they played in the conference championship.
Yes, that is what we're saying.
Right.
I don't think that teams should be penalized for having losing their great season that they made it to their championship, their conference championship.
So
you're playing for a
here's the problem with that. Here's 2 reasons why I think that, why I disagree with you guys on why I think that playing your conference championship should affect your college football playoff standings. That's crazy. Hold on.
Seeding, yes, but being out of the playoffs completely, no.
Okay, fair enough. The reason I say that is because if you're going to the college football playoffs anyways, that kind of downplays the entire point of your conference championship. Do you guys think that if you go to the college, what's more important, the national championship or your conference?
National championship.
Yeah.
So what do you think that means to the players that are going to go and play in their conference championships?
You're only playing for a bye, but you said you wouldn't want the
Hold
bye
on.
anyway.
Hold on. What does that do to the players? Your starting quarterbacks, your starting receivers, your starting running back. Are they going to want to play in the conference championship if the national championship is more important? Are they going to risk an injury?
For Texas, yes, because it's their first year in the SEC, and they
Hold
want to
on.
hold that over
Okay,
A&M's
Texas.
head.
So.
They want to hold that over A&M's
but
head.
you're talking. Okay, but
I see your argument, but I don't see them not competing.
Yeah.
100%. I think that if the national championship is that important and they got the playoffs coming up, I think they 100% back out.
Let's do that anyways. Like, hey, this
Georgia
wasn't even a
could.
true test of our team.
That's
Like,
the
you
thing,
got to
though.
put us
That's
in
the thing.
anyway. Like, fuck
That's
it
the
if we
thing, though.
lose.
Georgia can send all their walk-ons on, and they're still gonna make the fucking playoffs.
Right.
If they lose to Texas, so like.
Okay, but that's what I'm saying. That's the only outliers for the SEC. For the Big Ten, it could be different, right? For the Big 12, that's different, and for other teams, right? So we're talking about this could be a point where if you're saying if you just play in the fucking conference championship, you're still fucking in. Well,
Yeah,
what's
I
it
agree
fucking
with
matter
that
for the Big
because
12 then? They're going to sit everybody.
Not every team, because
right. We're
because
talking
if
about
you
the
look
SEC
at,
though.
again,
Where's that outlier?
I think that there's situations like because if you look at the
Well,
top 12 currently,
what would have
eight
A&M would have
teams.
done if they beat Texas?
That's
What
what
would A&M done if they beat
A&M would
Texas?
have been.
They would have
A&M
had to win They would have had to win the SEC championship game to go in.
Where
to
we're
the
seeing
playoffs.
that happen is right now with Clemson. Like Clemson is a 3-loss team, and they're in a situation where again, like every game that they play is if you lose, you go home. A&M would have been a similar situation if they'd beat Texas. It's a win or you go home because you were already a 3-loss team. Like what South Carolina or Clemson right now is 18, I believe it was. Yeah, 18. If they win, sure, bump them back up to 12. You know what I mean? Like you've gotten in. Like you've done your job. You're a 3-loss team, but you won your conference. You've gotten in. I think that's legit the only way because if you look at 1 through 12 right now in this AP Top 25, 8 teams, 67, 2/3% of the teams that make up this are either in the Big Ten or the SEC. So that means that the rest of college football gets to compete for 4 spots. The rest of college football gets to compete for 4 spots. Of those 8 teams that are already in this AP Top 25, of those 8, only 4 are competing in their national championship. Or sorry, their conference championship. Only 4. So 4 other teams are locks. So that means that if that is going to be the standard, I'm just saying that if that happens this year, that will be the standard. The rest of college football, will only be able to get 4 spots for the rest of our lives. We'll only be able to get 4 spots. But if you eliminate, because Dalton, you had brought up a good point, like why was 3 the cutoff? Why is 3 the cutoff? Because if you look at the top 25, there's no teams that have 4 losses. If you look at the teams with 3 losses, boom, SEC, boom, SEC,
Who's
boom,
the first?
SEC.
Is Alabama
competing
the
in the
first?
conference
The
championship?
first
That's where DJ. I know you hate to hear it, but that's where those are the strength of schedules that they're looking at.
That's again, that is the special treatment of the SEC because again, Missouri, boom, 3 losses. Of all of these teams that are 3 losses, we've got one team in the Big 12
Missouri
with a 3 loss, one team in the ACC with a big loss or 3 losses, one team in the Big 10 with 3 losses. But there's 4 teams with 3 losses in the SEC. What are we doing?
Right.
Literally, what are we doing?
But like you said, there's no 4-loss teams in the top 25 as of right now in this updated AP poll, right? However, Missouri, like you were saying, I don't know if I necessarily agree with them being in the top 25, but the only benefit of the doubt that I give them is that Brady Cook came back, their starting quarterback. They've been missing for a long time. I know your argument is probably, like you've said before, is they haven't shown anything since he's come back to really even show that they should be in the top 25. I just think that the committee's just seeing that they've gotten Missouri back. Brady Cook comes back. But then again, like I said, I agree. I don't know why they're there, but they are. And they have a 3 losses. Brady Cook's back. Missouri's looking like the normal selves with Brady Cook being back. However, I don't know if they've really played anybody really shown to the point that they get there. However, they have been playing really well with him being back. But yeah,
didn't he play the full Alabama game?
No,
Brady Cook was out.
Oh, he was out.
He
Okay.
started, but
Brady-
then
Oh,
he got injured. But then,
Got you.
but my point is like you have to realize though that the SEC does receive special treatment. Like, how many SEC teams even make up the top 25? There's probably 8. Half of your conference is ranked in the top 25.
I would say special
That's
treatment because of they know the
ridiculous.
strength of schedule. That's
Okay,
The
okay,
reason that you
that-
get the strength of schedule is because these people are voting that.
That's
like,
true,
hey,
though. Hold on,
because
hold
the
on,
SEC
hold on, hold on,
has
hold on.
one of
I'll
the
settle this
biggest
argument
media
right
rights,
now.
and they're going to get money for ranked
I'll set
versus
this-
ranked matchups.
Hey,
That's all it
hey,
is.
hey! I'll settle this argument right here, right now, boys. If you said the SEC gets special treatment, Dalton says because the schedules in the SEC are so hard. Well, then Texas didn't have an easy schedule. Then, if that's the truth,
Exactly, and that's the
okay.
loop that
Compared
we're
to the
fed.
SEC,
That's the
we're
loop that
comparing
we're
your
fed.
strength of schedule in the SEC because Texas hasn't played top-notch teams in the SEC. They've only played like the bottom feeders.
okay.
of the
But
SEC.
everyone else is talking about SEC gets special treatment because it's the SEC and it's the best. Those are the best 16 teams in college football.
Yeah, I mean,
if that's true, if that's true, then Texas didn't have an easy schedule.
I do think the
That's
bottom
true.
half.
Texas didn't have an easy schedule.
Well, right, but
Plain
what
and
I'm saying is I truly believe that the bottom feeders of the SEC could play competitively well versus the top contenders of other conferences. Like
So
I
then
think they can
Texas
beat.
doesn't
I
have
think
an
other
easy
conferences
schedule.
can beat the SEC for sure. They've proven that they have this year. But I would say that the bottom feeders of the SEC are 10 times better than the bottom feeders of other conferences. That's what we're saying. Overall, the
Oh, no,
SEC
Mississippi State's pretty bad.
they are bad. They are bad. SEC, like Mississippi State, trash them. Get them the hell out.
Yeah, but if Missouri gets to beat them, they become ranked. But I agree, Mississippi State's so bad.
But I just want you to understand what I'm saying is just like I mean, and I could be biased with this, and a lot of people in our comments may totally disagree with me, and that's fine. I get it. But from the consensus of what we see in the committee and what we have seen in the season is that the bottom feeders of the SEC are probably significant bottom feeders of other conferences, like I said. Okay, so the SEC overall, whole and whole, is a very, very tough conference to win in. Now,
Didn't Arizona State beat Mississippi State?
I'm not.
That's what I'm saying with Mississippi State. I'm saying trash them because they
I
are
don't
the
know if
total
they did or
outlier in the
not.
SEC this year. They are bad. They are real bad. But I mean,
It-
other than
it's not
them,
gonna get better.
it's a tough conference.
It's not going to
No,
get
I'm
better
saying
until
that.
the committee sets a rule, sets a precedent. And that needs to be
10 wins.
if you play for your conference championship game, 10 wins, and if you play for your conference championship game, it should be a lock.
This is the
So
checks,
Clemson
this
should
is-
already be in
This is the checks. No,
automatically.
no. This is the checks and balances that I feel like it needs. 10 wins, right? If you've at least secured 10 wins, cool, right? Then the next thing is like, okay, so you've got 10 wins, whatever, or you need to be playing in your conference championship. Where we see that happening is with Clemson. That's the only team right now.
So
is with Clemson.
so me and Dalton understand what you're saying is that you need 10 wins to get into the CFP.
Yeah,
But-
to be in the conversation, because
Well,
look at all these teams that
but
are
what-
10
but
and 2.
what
that are way
Dalton's
down
trying
here
to
and 10
say-
and 1.
And I agree with you. I think 10 wins, you're in the college football playoff, you should be in. I get that. And if you lose, if you're a 2-loss team and you lose your conference championship game, I think you should still be in. But what Dalton is getting at is that Clemson sneaks in at 9-3 to their conference championship game. And Dalton's argument is, me and you've been saying if you play your conference championship game, you're in. But so if Clemson sneaks in at 9-3 and they automatically they're in their conference championship game, they should not automatically be in, right? Because they have 3 losses. So in order for them
Correct.
to even make the CFP, they would have to get that 10th win.
Correct, because throughout their regular season, they've already accrued 3 losses.
So
you are
basically
already in
your
a playoff situation.
So basically, what you're saying is the only way that you automatically get into the CFP, and if you play in your conference championship game, is if you've already had 10 wins going in to the conference championship game.
And I'm not saying that you should, because again, if we even look at the top 20.
No, I'm
20.
asking because if
Oh no.
if
Yeah,
you
I
already
just wanted
have
to clear
10
it up.
wins going into the conference championship game, then you only have 2 losses on the year. Therefore, if you lose that game, are you out of the playoffs?
I think
Because
that's the
now you have
conversation.
3 losses. Now you're 10-3.
I think that that's the conversation for Power 4 conferences. I can't make that conversation for Boise State and UNLV. I think it's one of those two teams, they win, they're in. And although they're still only both of those teams currently, one's a 1-loss team, one's a 2-loss team.
Well, hold on. What's Army ranked at? Because didn't they say the highest group of 5 champion?
24.
What's UNLV at?
19.
19.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think
the committee already stated that highest group of 5 champion gets in.
Yeah. So I think that, but and that's unfortunate, and I hate even saying that, because I think that really Boise State deserves to be in, and Dalton, that's where that conversation comes in, is like of deserving to be in, and are they the best team? You know, because right now it's hard for me to say, like, all these other teams up here above them have a similar record, right? They're all less than 3 losses. Hell, they're all less than 2 losses or less, right? So my thing is like, yeah, then it's just like, you know, can we put Boise State in? I think everybody wants to see Boise State in, but if they go out and they lose to UNLV, then I think UNLV deserves to be in, not Boise State. But I can't put both of those teams in. But if you look at the top 20 teams, according to this, the top 20 teams, there are 15 teams with less than 3 losses. You're telling me right now we can't make a 12-team playoff with 15 teams who are currently less than 3 losses? Why do we got to put 3-loss teams in?
But see, this is where it's going to come down to me, is like with Alabama, and not just Alabama, but for an SEC team to make it to the playoffs every year is going to be fucking it's going to be the cream of the fucking crop for the SEC to go. The Boise State will go every fucking year, and they've only played one team in the top 25, and it was the Oregon, and they lost. Other than that, they've had they've had a fucking cakewalk and have won almost every other game by fucking at least 2 to 3 to 6, 7 touchdowns.
I think
you're going to penalize them for that, though?
No. The only thing that I'm saying with the committee is the only thing I'm penalizing is the fact that they don't have an identity win. None. They don't have any wins in the top 25. None. They have no identity. And they're going to walk right into the playoffs. Like, they'll walk in every single year, and Alabama's got to prove themselves fucking week after week after week. So does Texas. So does Georgia, week after week after week. And if they get 3 losses in a very tough fucking conference where they have to face 6 top 25 teams every fucking year, you got Boise State, who faces Oregon or Penn State, one top 25 team once, and then they fucking face Mercer, who, like, fucking teams that Alabama plays before Auburn, like, so like 9 weeks out of the year. Like,
obviously you think Alabama deserves to be in. That's apparent. I mean, a fan. Do you think Ole Miss deserves to be in? No. And I'm not meaning that in any type of diss. But do you think Ole Miss deserves to be in?
Yes.
Do you think South Carolina deserves to be in?
I think South Carolina deserves more than Ole Miss. Yes.
Okay. So then I
agree with Dalton on that.
And here's my issue.
Say, if the committee puts Bama in, you have to put South Carolina in.
Sure. Okay. So let's say that. So then currently what that means is we're going to put Texas
Alabama
in.
has the head-to-head on South Carolina.
Okay. It doesn't matter. We're saying that y'all both said that those two teams deserve to be in. Texas, SEC.
Whoa, back up. I did not say deserve. I said if they put Bama in, then you have to put SC in.
So we're saying that Bama's going in. So Texas, Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, South Carolina. 12 teams, 5 of them are the SEC. The
only fucking argument that I would say to that
playoffs is SEC teams. That's whack. So now
for this year, because the strength of schedule,
the Big 12 is having to compete with the Big 10 and the AC, the Big 10 and the ACC, and even our own conference for 7 other spots.
No.
Let's go ahead and sketch in 5 SEC teams.
Calm down.
Into the the college football playoffs.
Look, all I'm saying is Boise State's going to be there. We know that. Unless they lose, then it's going to throw shit up. But
you done fucking jinxed them.
But look, no, here's all I'm fucking saying is they haven't had a signature win. They don't have anything.
What are they supposed to do
about that? Hold on. But give them more fucking top 20.
Boise State, yes, Boise State beat UNLV earlier this season. UNLV is a top 20 team right now.
Okay, so they're 22. At the time they weren't ranked, but yes, you're right. They do currently have a top 25 win. That's it. So that is their identity. That's their best win they've had all year.
Yeah.
Well, they
So
did
what's
go
the point?
It's
toe-to-toe with
UNLV,
Oregon.
but
You can't
that's
ignore that game.
but
They went
but
toe-to-toe with Oregon.
so DJ,
They did.
if you talk about strength of schedule, who would you say has a tougher strength of schedule? Just answer that
Any
between Boise
SEC
State.
team.
You would
Boise
choose
State or who?
or Alabama. Who has the better strength of schedule?
I'm not sure why that matters.
Just
Who
answer the
lost
question.
Who lost to more bad teams?
Who has the strength of schedule? Answer that question first, and I'll
Bama.
answer yours.
I mean, that's obvious. Bama.
Okay, right? So they're 9-3, and they have the harder strength of schedule. If they let Boise State in now, they're setting the precedent that basically Boise State will go every single year, and Boise State doesn't have to change their schedule. If the precedent that they should set now is that yes, they should let Bama in over teams like Arizona State, because next year they need to give Arizona State like 5 to 6 top 25 teams like they did Bama.
So
and let's see how that plays out.
Is Boise State a bubble team? Is Boise State a bubble team?
No, you give Boise State.
Yes,
but
yes, they are.
Go ahead, Dalton.
Boise State is not a bubble team. If you give
they are.
If they
they're
lose,
in.
if they lose, no,
If
they're
they
not.
lose, they're out. Look, I get
This
where you're
conference
coming
championship
from.
is dependent upon them getting in. I would say that that's a bubble team.
Right. Well, I'm saying bubble teams are the teams that are outside looking in, outside the bubble. They're currently in the fucking bubble. But yes, if they lose, they're out. But Bama, we're out. When I think bubble, I'm thinking of teams that have no fucking say in what's going on in the fucking college football playoffs. They need other shit to happen in order to come in. That's being outside the bubble. That's a bubble team.
I think
Boise State is
bubble teams to me, and the way I define bubble teams is bubble teams are dependent upon the outcomes of this weekend.
Boise State's got the fucking ball in their court. Bama does not. That's a bubble.
Bubble
They're outside the bubble.
No, bubble teams are dependent upon the outcomes of this week. This upcoming weekend, they are dependent. If Boise State loses, they're out. They're a bubble team.
Okay, I see what you're saying. We have two different ideas of what a bubble is.
If Texas loses to Georgia, is Texas out? No. If Georgia loses to Texas, is Georgia out? No. If Oregon loses to Penn State, are they out? No. Same thing with Penn State. Those are not bubble teams. They are not dependent upon the outcome of this weekend.
Here's all I'm saying is with Boise State not having anywhere near the same schedule as Bama, I think that's what the committee is looking at. Yes, you are 10-1 or whatever it is.
11-1. So then that's my thing, is because
congratulations on beating fucking nobody.
But what we're doing is, if this is what we're doing, the standard that it creates is that Boise State as a one-loss team. Who is their loss to? Do you know, Dalton? Oregon.
They
lost by 3 points.
They should have beat Oregon.
3 points
they
to Oregon.
They should have beat Oregon.
3 points to Oregon. And we now are considering them a bubble team. They lost in a very close matchup to Oregon. So what we're telling Boise State and everybody in the Midwest Conference and the Sun Belt Conference and all of these other conferences is, hey, if you lose one game, the best case scenario for you is you're a bubble team. When that's bullshit.
I was going to say.
That's literal we can tell the SEC and the Big Ten, hey, you can lose 3 games and you're a bubble team. Anybody else, you even think about losing one game, you've got to make it to your conference championship. And
all I'm saying is, if Boise State had at least 3 more games in the top 25, I do think that they are sitting a little more pretty. I do.
No.
What are they supposed to do? They have to play 8
next year. They got to.
They have to play 8 conference games. What are they supposed to
do? Brothers, time out. Before the season started, the committee said the highest ranking group of 5 conference champion gets in. That is Sun Belt, American Conference, the Mountain West, the Conference USA. 4 conferences fighting for one spot. That's nuts.
Yeah.
So out of all those teams in those 4 conferences, if you lose one game, you're, like DJ said, you're a bubble team. Alabama can lose 3 games and still get in. And I get that their strength of schedule is harder than Boise State's, but you have 4 conferences fighting for one spot.
Right.
in
And
the
I mean,
college football
you could
playoff.
even argue that they could fight for 2, because if Boise State did beat Oregon in that situation, Boise State would be a top 6 team. Then I think that if they lost their conference championship, they would still be in. But then maybe it's like a Texas State in the Sun Belt who's in is maybe a 1-loss team, and then they go to their conference championship and win it. Like, I think that you could see a world where that does end up happening. But overall, I think year to year, Nathan, that point is fair. We have 4 conferences competing for the 1 spot, and that's the reality of it. And I'm not arguing for more Midwestern teams or Mountain West teams and Sun Belt teams to be in it. But I think that what you do need to do is set the standard of, hey, there can't be 3-loss teams in this. And Dalton, I know that's, again, very targeted at you, but that's also targeted at every. We've got Big 12 teams. Everybody can make the argument. People are even making the argument for Colorado to be in the college football playoffs because they're going to bring in a ton of money. Guess how many losses they've got? 3.
4.
They've got 3 losses.
4.
They've got 3. They are 9-3. So they've got 3. They've got 3 losses right now. I'm not entertaining the conversation. First off, you're not even competing in your conference championship. So what are we doing? Like, that's not what we're doing right now. You also got 3 losses. I don't care how much money you can generate. But that's in reality, that's what we look at. And it's so crazy. Eliminate all of these 9-3 teams, and even if we look beyond that, we can add 2 more. So in the top 25 teams, there are currently 17 teams. In the top 25, there are 17 teams who have 2 losses or less. You're telling me right now, if we've ranked these teams 1 through 25, we can't pick up the best 12. I'm not saying that Bama does not deserve to be 11 at where they're at, but since they have 3 losses, they're done. They're done. Because if all Baylor gets is 1 loss, because we even look right now, Arizona State, 2 losses. And they barely moved us. They barely moved them up. We didn't even make the cut last week with 2 losses. Didn't even make the cut last week with 2 losses. So that tells us that if you want that a Big 12 team is really 1 loss and you're good. 2 losses, you're a bubble team, right? That's for the most part everybody, but we're the back end of the bubble team.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's crazy though. If Arizona State were to lose a conference championship game and say Texas beats Georgia Saturday, they'll have the same record, but Georgia will get in over Arizona State.
And that's where I think that strength of schedule comes in. That's where I think strength of schedule comes in. And I'm cool with that. I can make an argument for strength of schedule for anyone less than 3 teams. Because if you can't even compete in your conference, what makes you think you're going to compete in the college football playoffs? You didn't even compete in the conference championship of your own conference.
But what we're saying is
college football playoffs.
Is Arizona going into conference championship at 11-2? They don't, or 10-2. Sorry, not 11-2. 10-2. They should meet the criteria of a 10-win season, and this conference championship loss shouldn't affect them. But it's going to, because it's the Big 12.
Yeah. Well, I'm not even kidding. We will probably see a situation where we don't see a Big 12 team get in this year. There's a hype. If Arizona State wins, yes. If Iowa State wins, probably not. And you know what's going to happen?
What's their record? Are they 9-3?
They're both 10-2.
Well, the thing is I'm pretty sure, right? If Boise State loses to UNLV at 19, and that means that Arizona State or Iowa State, who's 12-16, will get the first round bye. Because it's right.
Yes, possibly, but
because if Boise State loses, because UNLV had a good game with Boise State, they almost beat Boise State last time they played.
So if Boise State wins, do you think they get the 4 spot?
I do.
Yes.
The way that these are showing, there's no
because Boise State will be the highest ranked.
There's no respect.
Boise State will be
yeah. I do think so.
Boise State would be the highest ranked. But if UNLV goes out and actually pulls it out like they almost did against Boise State and actually win, and Boise State does, unfortunately, if they do get the boot, and UNLV gets they'll go in, but UNLV will have to play the first round. Unlike Boise State. Boise State would get the first round bye if they win. UNLV will not. They'll have to play the first round, but because Arizona State and Iowa State, who are both playing each other in their conference championship, are both ranked higher than UNLV. So that means that one of them, if they win, will then get the bye instead of Boise State if they lose.
Correct.
But those are the conversations that should be happening. What we're having, that conversation that we just had, that's the conversation that should be happening. Not should this 3-loss team or this 3-loss team or this 3-loss team. Because the second that we open up the door for a 3-loss team, we've invited Alabama, we've invited South Carolina, we've invited Ole Miss, we've invited Colorado, Illinois, Missouri, Syracuse. We've now invited all of them to give their pitch.
Well, all that could still happen in Bama, South Carolina, or Ole Miss could still get in, even if that happens, though.
But then you know what? Then that's where a conversation
can of worms.
That's where a conversation can happen of, well, let's look at strength of schedule. Let's do that. For all of these 9-3 teams, let's look at the strength of schedule. But then for all of the 10-2 teams, let's look at the strength of schedule. For all of the 11-1 teams, let's look at the strength of schedule. For all of the undefeated teams, let's look at the strength of schedule. They should be in their own bracket. I understand that the SEC has the hardest conference, and people could argue that the Big Ten does. So I'm going to put both of those in the same conversation. But with that comes a price. You get the best recruits. You have the largest recruiting pool. People grow up thinking about playing for you. People don't grow up thinking about playing for Baylor. So you have the largest recruiting pool. That's the pro. The con is that you put those recruits to work and you find a way to win 10 games. That's if you have to be bowl eligible within the SEC and you play 8 games within the SEC, you only play 4 non-conference games. What are you supposed to do? You can win the first 4 games of the year, and then the second you start SEC play, you still got to win 2 to be bowl eligible.
Before we end tonight and hop off here, I want to ask both of y'all something real quick and see what y'all's take is on it. If Boise State wins and beats UNLV, and say Arizona State wins and they're 11-2, how mad is the Big 12 commissioner going to be if a group of 5 gets the bye over Arizona State?
I don't think that would really matter because, if you look at their schedule, Arizona State, who's their best victory? BYU, Kansas State's not that great anymore. Utah had a ton of injuries this year. Poor team. But Utah's not that great of a team. So their biggest win is BYU. And then that's a similar win to UNLV.
Is it a slap in the face to the Big 12? Is it a slap in the face to the Big 12?
I don't think so. I really don't. I think
it's a bigger slap if you leave the Big 12 out then.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. I don't think it's a big slap in the face at all because Boise State, if they do win this game, they simply are the better team. And they've shown that for sure. Arizona State has done some work this year for sure. But I think that Boise State has proven to be the better team, but you can't leave out a Big 12 team. That should almost be a guaranteed as if you win the Big 12, you're in.
That's so crazy though, because there's a good possibility that the Big 12 will only get one team in every year because the Big 12 is so wide open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a situation that again, if Baylor again was 9-1 or 11-1 in that situation, we're a bubble team. I guarantee you that we're being considered as a bubble team, probably coming in at 10. We're Baylor, hopefully considering Baylor a top 10 team as a 1-loss team, and we lose our conference championship. Shit, dude,
you're out.
We just lost one game the entire year up until the conference championship.
And speaking of that, with UNLV, if they do win, which is going to be interesting, because as of things sit right now, if Bama gets in, they're looking at Bama playing Notre Dame, I believe it is, and the winner of the Bama Notre Dame game will play either Boise or UNLV.
Okay, hold on. If they put Bama in, If they put Bama in, Boise State wins, Arizona State wins. Does Bama go in at 12?
No.
Yes.
I don't make that for me. No, and I don't want to even really want to entertain that. But if y'all want to have that conversation, sure.
I'm just saying because who would 12? Yeah, you're right. That'd have y'all playing Notre Dame. Then
Give
right?
me Miami. Miami's 10-2. Give me Miami.
No, I was just asking.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. But like the 12, you can give me to answer that question, Nathan, is if Arizona State wins, then you can give me Miami. You can give me, and I don't think BYU should be in because if we put BYU,
But see, that's where I go back to Miami is. DJ, there's nothing wrong with what you're thinking. I know you and I completely think different. Nathan's kind of like middle ground. He's kind of like an independent. But like I feel like DJ's kind of on the side of most deserving. We need to reward them. And I'm more on the just who is the better team. I feel like because like a strength of schedule, I rely heavily on that. DJ, I know I'm putting you on timbers right now, but like that takes me back to Miami being 10-2, being 0-0 versus top 25. Having 2 unranked losses. They have proved nothing. They're like Missouri to me. They are like literally, if they have one more loss, they are Missouri. And you hate Missouri because you said they proved nothing. If Miami loses one more game, they are Missouri. Granted, they have proved nothing all year. So I know your argument is 10-2. You've won 10, you're in. But that's where I disagree is like, well, they haven't proved nothing. There's so many 10-2 teams that have played 0 teams in the top 25 and have unranked losses.
Right, but
they have played none. Miami's one of them.
All of these 10-2 teams.
Wait.
If we look,
who you lose to, should that matter?
Yeah.
What?
Yes.
Who you lose to?
But again, that's what I mentioned earlier. Is all of these 10-2 teams. Let's look at the 10-2 teams here. Georgia, Tennessee, Ohio State, Arizona State, Miami, Iowa State, BYU. Let's talk about the 10-2 teams and their strength of schedules. Do I think that BYU should be ranked above Georgia because they're simply 10-2? No. That's where the strength of schedule comes into conversation. That's
okay.
What I'm not on the side of most deserving. That's not what I'm saying. That's always been like such a black and white conversation of like, hey, it's either the best
so
team
why does
or the
Miami
most deserving team. It's not that.
Why does Miami why does Miami go in over Bama? Because they're 10-2.
Because they've found a way to get 10 wins.
Because they're the most deserving. But are they the better team? They deserve it because they're 10-2 is what you're saying. That's what I'm saying is what you're saying.
I mean, yeah.
Like
because they met the criteria.
Just
because in any other
that's what I hate is criteria.
I get it, but I'm sure you do.
But criteria of being 10-2. Who else is 10-2 in the Sun Belt? Let's go look because then they should be in with Miami. Then they should hold hands and they should skip right into the playoffs together.
What hurts Alabama?
I'm just making a point here.
What hurts Alabama is if who you lose to matters. Dalton said earlier that Miami lost to Georgia Tech and Syracuse. Bad losses. Who you lose to's matter. Y'all had some embarrassing losses. Y'all should not have lost to the Vanderbilt.
Vanderbilt's been a lot better than what most people think, though. Vanderbilt is not Oklahoma. They were much better.
But teams that y'all beat them. So that's what I'm saying. Who you lose to matters.
I think also who you beat matters too. I
agree, but I would say the loss to Oklahoma and a loss to Vanderbilt looks a lot worse than a loss to Georgia Tech and a loss to Syracuse.
Right, but I would also say that the who you've played and how many teams you've played in the top 25 also matter that you've beat. But Miami has no leg to stand on that. They have no leg to stand on.
If we're gonna entertain, and this is what
all they're saying is I'm 10-2.
This is why I don't. This is why I don't want to open that door. Is because if we open up that door, if personally for me, I'm putting in y'all are the third team of the SEC teams that are 9-3 right now and are ranked. 4 teams are ranked, but the top 3 of the 4. But it would be, in my opinion, of those 4 teams that are ranked, it would go South Carolina, it would go Ole Miss, it would go Alabama, then it'd go Missouri. That's the way that it would be.
But we have the head to head on South Carolina.
Okay, but South Carolina has had better victories than y'all. Who have y'all beat?
Georgia.
That's right. And so has Ole Miss. And
But South Carolina has not.
Okay, and
I don't know what you're saying with
so
South-
then and that's what I'm saying is like that's what opens
South
up
Carolina
this
didn't
possibility.
play
So
Georgia, so you can't use that argument in the strength of schedule.
But they,
though.
But
yes,
so
I
then
can
maybe
because they
what I
haven't
do-
played a team better than Georgia.
So okay, let's look
Well,
at Ole
South
Miss.
Carolina, but
Let's
that's
look at
not
Ole
South
Miss.
Carolina's fault that the SEC didn't give them Georgia.
Okay, but they played us.
Okay,
I know, I get that.
And we beat them.
South Carolina is now out the
So
door.
let's
Thank
move
you.
on.
Okay, South Carolina's now out the door. Let's look at Ole Miss now. Ole Miss. They beat
Okay.
South Carolina, who we're
Cool.
discussing is a bubble team of the college football playoffs. They beat Georgia, who y'all beat. They beat them. I'm not sure what y'all beat them by, but 28-10, pretty impressive. They beat South Carolina on the road. South Carolina was at home. Their losses, much less worse, I guess. I don't know how I'm trying to say that, but it's better than the losses that y'all had, right? 3 losses to Kentucky, or 3 points to
Kentucky's
Kentucky.
4-8.
Huh?
Kentucky's
So
4-8.
that Kentucky loss was pretty bad.
Because they're worse. They're lower than Oklahoma.
Okay. And then they beat Oklahoma. They lost.
And Florida is 7, and they lost to Florida, who's 7-5.
Yep. And they lost to LSU. But my point is y'all lost.
And they lost to Kentucky. And they lost to Kentucky at home.
Okay. Y'all lost to Oklahoma. And right now they were 2-6 in conference, 6-6 total. Right? Y'all lost to Oklahoma.
Better
Y'all
than Kentucky.
Y'all lost to Oklahoma. What was it 28-3 or 24-3?
24-3.
24. Y'all lost to Oklahoma 24-3. They lost to Kentucky by 3. They lost to Florida by 7. Y'all lost to Vanderbilt by what? Was it like 14? 17, double digits. Y'all lost to Vanderbilt by double digits, right?
Okay,
So
and what's Vanderbilt's record? I don't know.
Vanderbilt right here is 6-6, 3-5 in conference play. Y'all are one of their 3 wins on the season. They're a 6-6 team. They're not like, sure, you can make an argument that they played in close games, absolutely, and I'll hear that out. That's fine, but we're not. They were what 16, 15, 14, 13, 12 in the 12th in the SEC is where they finished. 12th in the SEC. So
hats off to Vandy for not finishing last.
I think that Ole Miss has a better case than y'all do. You have one victory.
Yeah. Well,
you have one victory.
They lost. They did lose to LSU, who we beat the dog breaks out of.
Okay, they also beat Georgia. They also beat who else? South Carolina.
Yeah.
They
We beat Georgia. We beat South. We beat Georgia. We beat South Carolina. They did beat Oklahoma, but we beat the shit out of LSU. They did not.
They beat the shit out of Oklahoma.
They beat the shit out of Oklahoma.
Okay.
Okay.
So obviously that's where it goes back and forth though. So who is the better team, Oklahoma or LSU? But who's the better who's the better team, Oklahoma or LSU? If that's the deciding factor of the 2 bad losses, who's the deciding factor?
We're going to talk about who's the better team between Oklahoma and LSU. We're talking about a team that's 8-4 and 6-6. Why are we even entertaining that?
We beat the shit out of the team that's 8-4.
Right.
But y'all lost to the team that was 6-6.
Yeah.
Right. We did. But what I'm saying is it kind of goes both ways. But at the end of the day,
you're right, because those are 3 lost teams.
That argument's pointless.
You can chop up all of the good victories that you had and just look at all the bad losses that they had as well. If it's one game, if the only game that Ole Miss lost was this Florida game, they won everything else, and the only game that they lost was this Florida game by a touchdown, this wouldn't even be a conversation. Even if they lost just the Florida game and just even the Kentucky game. If they lost the Kentucky game and the Florida game, they'd be 10-2, and we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Fuck yeah! If we beat Oklahoma, we wouldn't be having this conversation either, DJ.
Right.
I mean, exactly. There's a lot of what ifs.
Why?
We're playing
because
in the SEC championship.
Be 10-2. You know why? Is because we would be 10-2.
Yeah,
exactly
but that's
why.
what I'm saying is right
These
now.
are-
But look,
it's-
but of course, like I don't know why you're stuck on this 10-2 thing, but
Dude, 'cause we
right
gotta
now, based on what
we're gonna have 5 fucking SEC teams, and then the Big Ten is gonna be in a situation where we're gonna let 4 Big Ten teams in there. Because if we go back and look, if we let those 5 SEC teams in that we had talked about, the 3 that are already in on top of Bama and South Carolina, which we've even kind of debunked South Carolina because they're a 3-loss team, and we've kind of almost moved in Ole Miss, but 5 SEC teams. Now we've got Oregon, we've got Penn State, we've got Ohio State, we've got Indiana. Now we got 4. We've got 4.
I think the only way to
That's
fix this too.
9 fucking
Here's
teams.
my
3
solution.
spots left to compete for.
Here's my solution. I think that how many conference games do we play? 8.
Yes.
I think from what we need to do here on out, since we have 10 total games, I think we should play 5, not 8. And I think what happens is however that shuffled. But I think from there, you need to have 5 non-conference games that go out to prevent things like this from happening. So that way Boise State doesn't play 8 conference games and 2 non-conference games outside.
4.
So that way we can stop having these conversations. I think you should give Boise State, since they had a hell of a year, give them 4 SEC games next year. Throw them in the mix, baby. I'm fucking down.
They're not going to do that because, like we said
Why not?
earlier,
Why would they do that?
because
Because Boise
there's 4
State.
conferences competing for one spot. 4 conferences, 1 spot.
Boise
Right,
State did
but
that,
what
and they
I'm-
lost to Oregon this year, and now they're a bubble team. They lost to Oregon by 3. They've proved their worth.
What I'm
They
saying
lost
is
to Oregon by 3
I'm
points,
just saying,
and now they're a bubble team. Why would they ever do that?
I'm
No,
just
they
saying,
wouldn't.
spread the wealth of the strength of schedule. I believe that Boise State's schedule is way too easy. It's too much of a cakewalk for a team like that, of that caliber. It's too much. It's just like when Clemson was. Clemson was going to the top 4 of the college football playoffs every single year, from Deshaun Watson to Trevor Lawrence. Like, dude, they had it going because they literally had a freaking cakewalk every year in their conference. And now you've got Miami that's finally rising up, right? You've got these other teams that are finally coming through, SMU, that are now kind of competing.
But don't act like Clemson didn't win several national championships over that time.
Okay.
So you want to talk about cakewalks, but you said the same thing about TCU. TCU wins the first round of the playoffs versus who was it, a Big Ten or an SEC team? And then
It was Michigan, and then they got clapped.
Yeah. So so they beat a Big Ten team, and then they go and I don't see what the argument is. Like, these teams who have cakewalks still are really good football teams. Like, they're still finding ways to win.
But I'm saying is let's go ahead and let's air this out, right? To stop these discussions, and let's go ahead and let's throw in some of these Big 12 teams, get them like 1 or 2 or 3 SEC schools in there, mix them in, right? Get the Mountain West thrown in, and mix in all these non-conference games. I want more non-conference games. What I'm saying.
Okay, so then why are y'all scheduling Mercer and Furman and the Citadel? How about y'all go?
Well, we have
out
8
and
conference games.
contact
What I'm saying is
Mountain West team?
we have 8 conference games, and then we get 2 or 3 of those.
4.
Like,
You play
other than
12
that,
games.
we're playing the SEC all year.
I get what you're saying, Dalton. But with the way it's broken down now, why would the Big 12 do that? Because they're already. I mean, this year alone, they're already looking at getting passed on. Why would you schedule an SEC team and a possible chance losing, knowing that if you play in the Big 12 and you lose one game, you have a good possibility of being out?
Well, it isn't helping. Like I was saying with Boise State, what does it benefit? Literally, what does it benefit?
Well,
they go
what
out
happens?
and their only loss is to Oregon, and that's a strength of schedule. And they lost by 3 points, and now they're almost out of the conversation if they don't win.
Look, I think the only reason they're out of the
point?
conversation, the only reason I think they're right out of the conversation with 1 or 2 losses is because of the strength of schedule. You believe me or not, that's just what I see.
Their 1 losses versus Oregon, so let's just wipe that null and void. Their 1 loss.
But what I'm saying is all I'm saying is if they had more strength of schedules, and you look at it and they're like, okay, they played Alabama, they played Georgia, they played Tennessee, then they play some of their conference games, and they can get a better gesture. Okay, yeah, they in their conference games they won by 30 in all their conference games, but damn, they lost to Tennessee by 20, they lost to Alabama by 10, they lost to Georgia by 40. Like, it's like, god dang, like, that goes to show you, like, damn, maybe like Georgia has, or Alabama's 9-3, but now they're looking at Boise State, who lost to Bama by 10 or whatever, right?
What I'm
saying
Dalton,
is
and no one is arguing that. What teams want to see are their teams in the conference playoffs or the college football playoffs, and knowing that they don't have to just win every single game. Because I'm telling you, on my side of the coin is with Baylor, it looks like if we lose one game, we're a bubble
more than
team.
one.
If we lose
Yeah,
two
pretty much.
games, we're basically out and really have to prove our worth.
Let's be
Like,
honest.
that
Playing in the Big 12 is
sucks.
already hard as enough as it is because the Big 12 is so wide
Look
open.
at and again, yes, you just talk about strength of schedules. Dalton, SEC and the Big 10 have the top 10 locked. But if you look at the Big 12, it's not like the Big 12 is a freaking cakewalk. Looking at the Big 12, the first team that we see, Arizona State 12. Then we go Iowa State 16, BYU 17, Colorado 20.
Hold on,
Like,
I didn't say the Big 12 was a
no, I
cakewalk
know,
though.
but that's the thing. Is we have all of
Everyone
these
else.
low to high teens and 20s for the Big 12, but we're only given one loss that we can have. 2 losses, and we're on the outside bubble. We have 3 lost teams who are ranked higher than us. So to assume that we're not playing anybody, but we only get one fucking loss, like we have teams that have 2 losses, and we're not even looking to get in the playoffs. What are we supposed to, like? We don't have a cakewalk, but all we're given is one loss. That's
why the
letting
committee
in
has to come up with something.
Letting in 5 SEC teams and 4 Big 10 teams, and only leaving the pot 3 more spots is wild. You're gonna have a situation where one team is gonna be the ACC, one team is gonna be the 5, whatever the
Group
4,
of 5.
whatever the conferences are.
Group of 5.
Yeah,
Group
whatever.
of 5.
So group of 5, and then what, Big 12? And that's maybe not
Big 12,
to even
that's
say
it.
that if the ACC doesn't have a team like Miami who would have won, and now we're having Miami and SMU face it out, who I think both teams should be in. I think that both teams are top 12 teams. But then they lost to Syracuse, so now it's the conversation like, maybe, I don't know. But if Miami were to win, I think that SMU and Miami should be in. So then all of a sudden that leaves the Big 12 team on the outs, because we wanted to let 5 SEC teams in who are going to sell out, and people are going to watch those games, and it's going to be a tough and competitive game.
Look, and I'm going to say
So
this because
be
I know
it.
we're going
So
around
be
and we're kicking a dead horse and we're going around in circles. So I'm going to say this, and then you guys can follow up or say what you want to say after. But I think at the end of the day, all I want to say is to kind of wrap up is there's a difference between most deserving, and I've already said this before, but I'm just doing a summarize. To me, there's a difference between most deserving and the better team. And you guys may disagree with that, but I think there's a clear line. There's a difference. Most deserving and who's the better team. The committee at the end of the day is going to choose the better team. Bama does not deserve to be in the top 12, but I do think they're one of the better 12 teams. I do. And that's me showing you that there's a difference to me between deserving and the better. We don't deserve it, and whatever. Like, and that's to your cases. You got to have 10 wins, right? I mean, that's y'all's argument, and that's fine. We don't deserve it based on the losses that we've had. However, Nathan's brought this up before too. If Jalen Milroe plays the way he's supposed to be playing, and we can play like we have in those 9 wins that we've gotten, if he plays in those 9 wins, not like the 3 losses, we are a top 12 team. Do we deserve to go because he's been inconsistent in those 3 other games? No. But when he is there, I do think we are one of the top 12 best teams in the country. I think the committee has a lot to think about, and I think that Alabama does have a good chance of missing out. And if they do, I can sleep better knowing that we deserve to be out. But I do, at the end of the day, believe we are one of the better teams. And if we do get in, that's how I'm going to rest knowing we are a better team. But at the end of the day, it's either do we deserve to be out or do we in because we're a better team? And I think the committee is going to have to decide that. Is it a deserving matter or a better team matter? And I think in the past, the playoffs has always been who is the better team, not the most deserving. I think, and I end with that.
I hear you, and I think that that's why they've decided to move on from a 4-team to a 12-team, is because they realized that the system was broke and they couldn't determine who was the better team and who was the more deserving team. And that's exactly, I knew that going from a 4-team to a 12-team, it was only going to open up that door even more. So what you need to do is you need to have criteria that you need to hit. And I don't know what that would have looked like with 4 teams, but it's a lot easier with 12. And by simply saying that you need to have a 10-win team, 10-win season, I think that that's a fantastic way of saying, hey, that's what you need to look forward to. If you can
Hey,
hit
and at the
10
end,
wins, then let's do it, because
yep.
nothing is going to stop Alabama. Nothing's going to stop Georgia from scheduling the Citadels, the Furmans, the Old
the
Dominions,
other
and
3
like,
games.
right.
The
Nothing's
other,
going to stop
yeah,
them,
the
because why
2
wouldn't they?
games.
Why wouldn't they go out and schedule a Big Ten team? Why wouldn't they go out and to really set themselves apart? You could really set yourself apart from an Ole Miss conversation, from a South Carolina conversation. All these teams are 9-3, just like y'all. So why are y'all not going out and scheduling all of these games with Big Ten conferences? Like, we could say the same things to y'all, but y'all aren't going to do that, because you know that that's not a smart idea, because if you add one more loss to your record, that screws you. So you wouldn't do that. You're going to schedule the Mercers. You're going to schedule the Furmans. You're going to schedule the Old Dominions. You're going to do that because you don't want to even take a chance. So that's my argument to that.
Unless you're Texas. That's the one thing Sark did when he first got here is he did a home and home with Alabama. Week 2 this year, he put Michigan on the schedule. And the next 2 years, so next year and the year after that, we have Ohio State week 2.
Yeah. And that's exactly how Texas is going to stand out from the rest of the SEC.
Well, they asked Sark, why'd you do that? And he said, well, he goes, you have to pass eye tests. You have to make sure that your guys can be able to compete at the whole season of the football schedule. And he was like, I want to know how early on how good my football team is. And he was like, I want to show early in the season that we're here and we can stand on business and compete for national championship. So we can talk about this, and this conversation is going to go the same way every single time, year in and year out. The fact of it is that the committee needs to set a precedent of what credentials you need to have to make the CFP. I'm a DJ. 3 losses and not a conference, and you're not playing the conference championship game. You probably shouldn't be in the CFP. Strength. We broke down strength of schedules. We broke down Alabama's schedule. We broke down Ole Miss schedule, and it kind of came out in the wash. It doesn't really matter because Ole Miss lost to a team that Alabama beat up on, but Alabama lost to a team that Ole Miss beat up on. So you look at strength of schedules, looking like that way. We're looking at that. What does it matter? Because it all comes out in a wash anyway. Because you're going to get nowhere with that argument. That's why I think the committee's got to come down to set a rule of credentials of what you need to make the CFP. And I think it's 10 wins and competing in your conference championship. There's going to be years where Texas loses 3 or 4 games and they're going to be out of the playoffs. There's going to be years that.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I kind of hope next year Texas will be in the same bubble as Alabama, and I want to hear Nathan make these same arguments next year.
You can ask my brother and you call him. I told him that Texas is going to have a gauntlet of a schedule next year in the SEC.
Yeah, as easy as it was this year.
They're going to have to play LSU, Ole Miss, Alabama, South Carolina. It's going to be a gauntlet of. There's a good possibility.
And if you guys win 3 games, if you guys lose 3 games,
you're done.
I want the same energy.
And the thing is I'm gonna give it.
I'll give it to you because I think the CFP.
Well, DJ, you are, because it doesn't matter to you.
Right. Even if I'm an 11-1 team, it doesn't matter to me. Apparently,
it still blew my mind that A&M is a 3-loss team and still could have snuck into the SEC championship game and gone in. But if they would have won and beat Georgia, hats off to them. But that's why I think the committee has to set precedent, because if not, then you're going to have all these 9-3 teams who are going to be like, well, and I'm just using this for reference. You're going to have all these 9-3 teams where you're going to have Alabama say, well, we beat Georgia and Georgia's in. And then you're going to have Ole Miss go, well, they lost to Oklahoma and we beat the crap out of Oklahoma.
And we beat Georgia.
And we beat Georgia too. And then,
we beat LSU.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
We're comparing 9-3 teams.
Yeah. And that's it's going to come out on the wash because, like I said earlier, y'all whipped up on a team that beat Ole Miss, but then Ole Miss whipped up on a team that beat y'all. So, like, when you do it that way, it doesn't really matter. It comes out on the wash because it's just everyone's pointing different directions because it.
Hey, hot topic. I'm going to say it. I'll even say Alabama Ole Miss and South Carolina are all top 12 teams in my eyes.
I'm sure.
Like, I'm being SEC biased.
So does the rest of the committee, and that's what's gonna happen is we're gonna let 5 to 6 SEC teams in, and it's gonna be a fun fucking time for everybody.
South Carolina, nobody wants to play South Carolina. That team is fucking rolling.
Right.
They're
That
fucking
defense
hot.
is insane, and they're running back.
I think South Carolina. I think the way what is it, Lenore Sellers or whatever is his name, that quarterback. I'm telling you, he's gotten a lot better and progressed a lot better as a rookie in this.
The
SEC.
running back Rocket Sanders is a beast too,
and I guarantee you that defense could literally, I think, could give Texas a run for their money on defense. I think the defense is probably head-to-head the best with Texas. And that way the offense has been playing with South Carolina, I think they could win a national championship if they fucking win. I think they're literally
I could make the same
one of the better
argument
teams.
about Baylor, but we're 8-4 because our defense is our defense is top-notch in the Big 12. And we have had Sawyer Robinson, who didn't start the first
that's what
4
I'm
weeks
saying.
of the season. And we have Bryson Washington, who's our rookie or our freshman running back, and he just eclipsed 1,000 yards after missing the first 3 games of the season. So I'd say that we're a much different team compared to the first 3 weeks of the season, but unfortunately, we got a couple losses over the time. So
I would like to see South Carolina. I would like to see South Carolina play Baylor to like test the defenses to see how good I want to see how good South Carolina's defense really is against Baylor, and I want to see how good Baylor's defense.
I would too, Dalton.
With South Carolina.
If you really want to see
that's why I want more non-conference games.
Do you really want to see that?
That answers my question.
Do you really want to see that though?
That's on the athletic director.
Then you absolutely need to allow 10 wins, 10-win minimums in order to get in, because outside of that, it'll never happen. It'll never happen.
I don't need what
you say.
Outside of 10-win minimums, we'll never play South Carolina. And if we do, is that really going to be a test of our team? Is like playing them the second week of the season? Like I said, we weren't even playing our best ball. Like South Carolina
I'm just saying if you're
ball in the first few weeks of the season, Baylor wasn't playing their best ball in the first few weeks of the season. We've gone completely different with a new running back, with a new quarterback, and it's just brought in a whole new confidence to this team. So sure, whatever. But the way to ensure that we can really see how the Big 12 fares against the SEC is by making it a 10-win minimum. But what we're going to do is we're going to keep the rich. And
I'll agree with that. If that ever happens,
I'll college football playoffs, and then not even allow that opportunity because they've taken 50% of the spots.
Look, if that even happens, DJ, I'll take it. 10-2, I'll take it. I want to see more non-conference plays, and I want to see how South Carolina plays against Baylor. I think Baylor's that good, like you said. I think their defense is one of the best in the country, and I want to see South Carolina play them.
If we schedule South Carolina and we lose, at least we got to see Baylor play South Carolina. Because you won't see us in the playoffs because we lost to South Carolina.
Yeah, because you lost.
But Baylor gets to prove I'm sitting here arguing that South Carolina is a top 12 team, but I want to see if Baylor can be a top 12 team and see if they compete. That's all I'm saying.
In the second week,
you're saying that
one of the first
DJ
4 weeks
saying
of the
that
season.
The DJ is saying that
different team.
Since Baylor plays in the Big 12, as soon as they lose to South Carolina, even if they lose by 2 points, 3 points, or whatever it is, with the one loss to South Carolina, Baylor being in the Big 12, they're already on the bubble. That's why you 10-win minimum, and if you have 3 losses and you get in the playoff.
But what does it matter if they beat South Carolina? If Baylor is, the top 12 teams are the top best. My argument is they're the top best 12 teams. If Baylor is going to be in the top 12, I want them to be the top 12 best teams. I don't want them to be because of conference championship and on the bubble and all this other stuff. I want them to beat South Carolina and be the best 12 team. That's my argument.
You have to realize though, recruits. Our best recruit, we are fucking stoked, bro. We are stoked if we get a 4-star recruit to go to Baylor. We're stoked. Yeah. That is an average day for these Bamas, these Georgias, these Tennessees, these Oregons, these Ohio States, these Texases. That's a normal. We are stoked if we get a 4-star recruit. I'm not saying that that's going to help our recruit, but if you're going to talk about in terms of the best teams, what are we doing? Like, we're talking about y'all's recruiting pool. Y'all are obviously the best team, the better team.
Look, I want to see the top.
What is the conversation even about? Like, I get that y'all are the best teams, but look at your recruiting pool. That's why you're the best teams. It's not that you're the best coached teams, because what's going on with Bama's quarterbacks whenever they get drafted? Are these players just system quarterbacks, or like, you know what I mean? They're surrounded by the greatest athletes. It has to do with their recruiting pool. They're not pro ready at the quarterback position. Sure, you can make the argument for running back and any other position, but like, and that's the thing is you see all these first round picks that go from Bama, that go from Georgia, that go from Ohio State. You don't see any going from Baylor. Hell, like you hardly even see anybody start in the NFL that comes from Baylor. There's probably 2 or 3 right now, and that's it. But you look across the board, it's like that's not even a conversation. Who's the better team? It's always in forever. It will always in forever be 8 teams. Always in forever be 8 teams. So if that's what we want to do,
that's why you gotta have Tim win.
If that's what you want to do, I'm telling you right now, we can go ahead and I'll write it on paper all the way till 2050. I'll go ahead and sketch in these 8 teams, no matter what their record is. Let's go ahead and sketch in these 8 teams, and everybody else gets to play for 4. Hell, y'all can sit, y'all can, if that's what we're gonna say, then Dalton, like you said earlier, y'all can sit out your conference game. You can sit out the Iron Bowl, because hell, you can lose that game. You can lose your conference championship. Guess what? You're still in. If that's what we're going to do, we can sketch it in as 8 teams no matter what, because I'm not saying that Bama is not a top 10 team. I can make the argument that they're a top 8 team, and I can do that. But if this is what we're going to do, it's going to jack up the entire college football system, and I'm saying that right now.
Because you're going to have ACC and
they already
Big 12
jacked
teams.
it up, but with 12 teams, they're going to jack it up even more by letting 6 SEC teams, 4 Big 10 teams, like they're going to jack the whole thing up. It is about the most deserving.
Not wrong.
It is about
You're
that's
not
why
wrong.
people transfer.
See, and I think that's fine, and we both are making our arguments, and I think I just have a different view of college football than you do.
Because your team is
That's
9-3,
fine.
and I get it. But put yourself in my shoes. Because if I was in your shoes, Dalton, I would be having the same thing. If Baylor next year joins the Big Ten or the SEC, I would be in your same shoes. Like, yeah, that would be fucking nice. But if you look at Baylor, and if Baylor loses one game, what are we doing?
They're on the bubble.
Like, what are we?
You're already on
even
the
if
bubble.
that situation where we did schedule at South Carolina and we go out and beat South Carolina, but then the second to the last week of the season we lose to Kansas, shit, we're done. We literally proved ourselves the entire season. Last week of the season we play Kansas and we lose by a touchdown. There goes our season. The whole thing was fun. We scheduled South Carolina though, and we won that game. Oh well,
but yeah, I mean,
cool.
I guess,
Love
I mean,
that.
EJ, I see what you're saying. I do. I mean, not necessarily it changes my mind, but I do see what you're saying. You just want hope. You want hope that you can at least make it to the
Yes.
12th college football playoff, even if you get beat by 73 in the first round. We fucking made it, and
Yes.
our recruits will fucking love it.
Yes.
And the viewers love that.
Yes. That's legit.
Yeah,
That
I
is
guess.
it. Because what Bama fans, and it's not just Bama. It's Bama, it's Georgia, it's Texas, it's Oregon, it's all of these other teams who have monopolized the recruiting pool. And
But you answered my question. You were just saying that you don't do most deserving, but then you just said you do. But that's what I'm saying.
In terms of your
You're like, I
perspective
don't
and
do
how you're
deserving.
looking at it, I guess that does make sense in how I
But
look
you just
at
admitted.
it.
But that's what I'm saying, and now you're admitting.
Okay,
That's
but-
all I'm saying. We have two. You are more deserving. I am. Who's the better
But
team?
you
shot
just
that down,
wanna
but
keep-
now
you
you're
just wanna keep
reiterating
You
it.
just want to keep the rich, and y'all keep getting your recruits, and everything's kumbaya with
I just wanna
y'all
see the
when
12
we get a
best
one
teams.
loss
That's
and we're
it.
fucked.
You're
I don't
you're
want that. I
punishing
just
the
want to see
Big
the 12
12
best
teams, the ACC teams for being in the conference that they're in, and that's not fair.
I just want to see the 12 best
SMU
teams.
isn't even getting money for 2 years off their media rights because they chose to join the ACC, and they have a
They're
they have a great
paying
fucking
to be in
season,
that
and they lose a
conference.
game. They lose their conference championship game, and now they're fucked and they're out.
They're out. Yeah, at 10-2 or 11. They would be 11-2.
Right,
And they're
but
out
I
of
don't think that
CFP.
game should not count towards your overall record. You are an 11-1 team. That conference championship
All I
should not
know
count because
is
not
this-
everybody's playing 13 weeks.
The CFP has to set a precedent. What needs to be done to make the CFP from a college football fan, I don't think you can put a 9-3 team in because it's going to open up a can of worms.
For the rest
And
of
you're
our
going to have
lives.
all these other, basically for forever.
This is the most.
And-
This is why I'm so
but
passionate because
The
this is
reason
most
why
important.
I would leave
I feel like Nathan's everything he's saying is going over my head because he'd be on the same fucking foot I am
No,
if he was
Anybody
9-3.
would be, Dalton.
DJ,
Anybody would be.
did
I
I not,
admitted that I'd be in your
DJ,
your
did I
shoes as
not
well.
tell you?
Well,
Hold
Nathan's
on,
acting like he never would.
No, time out.
It's pissing me off.
Time out. Before you got on the call, DJ, did I not tell you that I told you that if Texas lost to A&M, I thought that Texas would be out of the playoffs. Did I not tell you that?
I mean, yes, Nathan did view this conference championship as like a make it or break it, and I'm like, I don't think so.
In order for Texas to make the playoffs, even before the A&M game, I said if they want to make the playoffs, they have to beat A&M. I thought the way that Texas got into the CFP was beating A&M. If they didn't beat A&M, I thought that there's no way Texas is getting in.
When did you say that? Right before the call, right before we jumped on?
When we were on the phone before you got on.
Right, but that's easy to say after the game's already said and done. You've won it.
But
because I'm guaranteeing you, in your head, you're thinking all the possibilities that we still go even if we lose. Because I do that all the time with Bama, right? So I know you're doing the same thing.
Before the game on Saturday.
Me and Nathan were talking about like
easy to Monday morning quarterback.
Right.
And just say the things like say shit like that even
the game's over. Chase and Eric.
We were also saying that like we're like to an extent we're all delusional fans. Like, to an extent, we're all delusional fans, and we can't see past that. So I think it is fair to say that, Dalton, if we were in your shoes as, like, a team that, in terms of talent, yes, you deserve to be in. In terms of talent, you deserve to be in.
But Bama hasn't played like a top 12 team all year.
And it's not even that. It's not even
all year.
Hey, stop.
Don't look at me like that.
What do you mean we haven't played like that all year? We beat Georgia.
And Nathan, because
what do you mean we haven't played like that all year?
I don't want to have that conversation because Nathan, I can say the same thing about you. I can say the same thing about Texas. So I don't want to have the conversation about that.
It's easy to say when you play bottom feeders, Nathan.
Hey, according to you, the SEC is not bottom feeders. It's the best 16 best teams in the country. So.
They're the best conference in the country, but you still played the bottom feeders of the SEC to go to the SEC conference.
And you said the bottom feeders can win any other conference. So to me, that's
okay. But I'm talking about the SEC conference. I'm not talking about other conferences. That was when we were talking about other conferences. You've played the bottom feeders of the SEC conference to go to the championship. You haven't played nobody.
So A&M was nobody
compared to the SEC. No, they are not.
Compared to the SEC,
South Carolina beats A&M. Ole Miss beats A&M. You guys didn't play them.
South Carolina did beat A&M.
I know. I said South Carolina beat A&M. Thank you.
Oklahoma beat Alabama. Texas. Oklahoma beat the hell out of Alabama. Texas beat the hell out of Oklahoma.
Okay, 5-5. That's you're right. But you still played a 5-5 Oklahoma, who we lost to. That's fine, Nathan. But you still played their bottom feeder. Oklahoma's bottom feeder. We lost to them. But that's fine. We lost it, but y'all still played a bottom feeder. Y'all had the easiest path to the SEC to the championship, Nathan.
I'm not saying that we didn't have that.
So it's easy for you to talk and say the things like this and literally buddy up the DJ on this because it's easy for you to say all this stuff when you guys have had the easiest path. But I'm telling you, if you're in my shoes, you're talking a lot different.
So you can sit here and watch the Vandy and Oklahoma game and sit here and tell me that you're one of the best 12 teams in the college football playoff?
Yes. We're one of the top 12. I would say, but yes, if we don't go in, and I would like to see SMU, not Miami. If SMU made it in over us, I'll probably sleep better at night.
But
because yes, I do think they.
But SMU is going to go in if they win their conference championship.
Right. If they lose, they're out. And if they lose, they're 11-2 and they're out.
Right. Bama, like you said, guys, I don't think they deserve it, but I do think they are a better team, which I think is how the committee is going to view it. But when it comes down to deserving like you guys, I'm on the same boat with you. Okay, I get it. We don't deserve it.
You also have to put yourselves in our shoes because this is a point to both of you. Like, this is literally a point to both of you. Y'all, Texas, I think, is a better team than Bama. And Texas, guess what? That's not changing. Dalton, guess what? Bama's not changing. They're going to get better under Kellen DeBoer, whatever how you say his name. They're only going to get better. So, and that's my point. Is if what we want to do is we want to put the best teams in. Bama, arguably a top 10 team. I said that based off of talent alone. Yes, they should make it. But then guess what?
Just put in the whole SEC in the playoff.
If that's the principle that we're looking at, then I think that Ole Miss should be in. I do think that Alabama should be in. I do think that South Carolina should be in. I also think that Miami should be in. But what are we doing? We're talking about 9-3 teams. These teams with talent, they're not going away. They've been ranked top 10 for hell, like how long? Like we're talking like decades. But that's not going away over a year or two. That's not going to go away the next 20 years. Like Kellen DeBoer takes over this team, and in a year he's already got a top 5 expected recruiting class. That's not going away. They've lost 3 games. The talent is not going away. So if you want to be in the SEC, guess what's going to come with the pros of being in the SEC? Your recruits. That's the pros. I don't give a shit about your strength of schedule. You need to win. If you can't compete for the SEC, then you can't compete for the college football playoffs. If you can't compete in the Big 12, you shouldn't be able to compete in the college football playoffs. But guess what? If we compete in the Big 12, our recruiting pool is not great. That's the cost of playing in the Big 12. That's what this is. So I don't give a crap about strength of schedule. If you want to have the best recruits, go to the SEC. If you want to have the hardest strength of schedule, go to the SEC. If you want to make the college football playoffs, win 10 games. If you want to be bowl eligible, win 6 games. That's literally the price you pay. You can't get a 5th overall recruiting class and not be in one of the 2 conferences, which is the Big 10 and the SEC. That's the way that it is. But guess what? Every year, because you're getting a top recruiting pool, you're going to have the hardest strength of schedules. I mean, it's simple math. You get multiple 5 stars, you get numerous 4 stars, you're going to have the hardest strength of schedule. That's as simple as it is. That's the cost of doing business. And that's legit all that I have to say. Like because again, if that's the case, if that's the case, then fuck it. Like again, we'll have all of college football outside of the Big 10 and the SEC compete for 3 spots in college football playoffs. And like I said, Nelton, that's not directed towards you. I mean, it is, but Nathan,
technically 2.
Nathan, that's also
2 spots.
Yeah,
technically 2 spots because group of 5 gets 1. So
there you go, group of 5. So yeah, the rest of college football, like the ACC and the Big 12, get 2 spots, and that's it. So that goes to both of you. And that's why I'm saying that this system needs to be fixed. If you want the biggest recruits, then get the biggest recruits and go out there and win football games. Because we've even seen in the past 20 years where top recruiting classes and top teams, like the Michigan team that goes out and plays TCU, they think that they're a lot better because they got better recruits, and then they lose. That's going to happen. These teams are going to show up and they're going to get outcoached. And that's just what's going to happen. So I think that should they be given the opportunity? Yes, 100% I do. All of this to say, and this will be the last thing I say, Alabama shifts from underdog to betting favorite to make college football playoffs. They move from the plus 105 odds to now minus 200 favorites to make the college football playoffs. So all of that to say that the books are heavily favoriting Alabama to get in. That's all I've got for y'all. It's been such a pleasure, and we will see y'all next time.